We all know the Mahabharata as a grand epic, full of heroes, wars, and divine mysteries, but few imagine what it would really be like to live in that world. To wake in a mud hut, dodge curious geckos, or survive storms, droughts, and the occasional wandering tiger. In How to Survive the Age of the Mahabharata and More, we explore that ancient life step by step. In today's video, we'll talk about how your day begins in this world of mud, hope, and rituals. So let's not waste any time, and let's begin. You become aware, first, of the floor beneath you. It isn't wood, or carpet, or anything polished. It is packed earth, cool and faintly grainy under your fingers, as if the ground itself has agreed to become your bed just for the night. A simple woven mat cushions your bones, its reed fibers slightly uneven, the pattern faintly rough against your skin. It creaks quietly when you shift, a hushed reminder of how light everything is here, how little stands between you and the soil. The clay oil lamp beside you has burned low, its golden flame now a calm, steady eye instead of a restless tongue. It throws gentle shadows across the mud-plastered walls, where the faint imprints of fingers can still be seen, signatures of the hands that smoothed and shaped this place into existence. The walls are the color of warm earth after rain, strong enough to stand, soft enough to remember. You sit up slowly, and the hut reveals itself in small, careful details. To your left, you see a neat stack of clay pots, some wide-bellied for water, others narrow-necked for storing oil or grain. Their surfaces are not perfect. Each one bears the subtle thumb marks and tiny lines of handmade craft. A thin crack here, a slightly tilted rim there. Nothing is uniform, but everything is useful. This hut is not decorated for beauty. It is arranged for survival. Above you, the thatch roof spreads like a dry, golden nest. Bundles of straw and dried leaves interwoven with care form a protective layer between you and the sky. A few stray shafts of light slip through in tiny bright spears, catching dust motes that drift lazily, unhurried by the pace of your new world. Somewhere up there, something small scurries. A squirrel, a bird, or perhaps just the shifting memory of last night's breeze. Near your feet, a small grinding stone rests beside a larger slab, flecked with pale marks from years of crushing grains and spices. A wooden pestle, polished by countless hands, leans against it. You can almost imagine the rhythm of daily life here. The steady scrape of stone on stone, the soft thud of pestle on grain, the quiet conversations that would murmur between each movement. On the far side of the hut, a low wooden stool stands beside a small bundle of folded cloth, likely your only spare garment. It is simple, coarse cotton, dyed in faded colors by sun and time. Above it, hanging from a peg driven into the wall, is a string of dried herbs, neem leaves, tulsi, perhaps a few local plants whose names you do not yet know. Their fragrances subtle but clean. Protection, medicine, and flavor all hang quietly in the corner, waiting to be called upon. As your eyes adjust, you notice you are not entirely alone. On the wall just above your mat, a tiny gecko clings upside down, watching you with translucent, unblinking eyes. Its pale body blends almost perfectly with the mud, but its tail curls with lazy confidence, as if it has already judged you harmless. For a moment, you simply look at each other. The gecko twitches an eyelid, if geckos can be said to do that, and resumes its silent patrol, a guardian against the smaller insects that share your home. You take a breath, and the hut responds with a tapestry of scents. There is the faint smokiness of last night's cooking fire, lingering in the air like a memory. The soft, creamy aroma of ghee clings to the cool interior, mixed with the earthy tang of stored grain and the subtle sweetness of dried cow dung cakes stacked neatly outside, waiting to be used as fuel. From somewhere beyond the hut, You catch the distant scent of wet soil, hinting at recent or approaching rain. The world here smells alive, as if every object is quietly exhaling its story into the space around you. The hut is small, but it is not empty. It is full of careful choices. A simple water pot near the door reflects a sliver of light, its surface still and inviting. A wooden ladle rests beside it, worn smooth where fingers have gripped it many times before. A few handmade baskets, stacked one inside another, hold pulses, spices, and perhaps a precious handful of jaggery wrapped in cloth. Every item has a purpose. There is no clutter here, only necessity. You stand up, slowly, and your head nearly brushes the thatch overhead. The room feels close, but not suffocating. This hut is not a prison. It's a shell, a fragile barrier that turns the untamed outdoors into a space you can call home. Its imperfections are also its comforts. The slight draft through the reed window, the softness of the mud under your feet, the way sounds from outside slip in easily, bird calls, distant voices, the muted lowing of cattle. For a moment, a thought drifts across your mind. By modern standards, this might seem like hardship. No bed frame, no glass windows, no switch to summon instant light. But as you look around, you realize something else. Everything here is close to the earth, to the seasons, to a rhythm that isn't dictated by clocks or alarms. The hut breathes with the world outside, expanding with the heat of day and resting in the quiet of night. You move toward the low doorway and duck your head to step closer. The threshold is just a slightly raised strip of packed earth, polished smooth where countless feet have crossed it. You reach out and touch the doorframe, rough wood, faintly scented with age and smoke. This simple border divides inside from outside, private from public, rest from effort. Before you leave, you glance back into the dim, warm interior. Here is your mat, waiting to welcome your weary body at the end of the day. Here are your pots, your grinding stones, the quiet gecko, the lamp that will once again be lit as the sun fades and shadows grow long. This hut may not shield you from every hardship, but it is a place where you can return, close your eyes, and let the world grow distant. In this small, earthen space, you begin to understand. Survival in this age is not about conquering the world outside, but learning how to live gently within it. You step through the doorway, feeling the cool morning air greet your skin, and hear the faint murmur of voices at the village well. The day is beginning, and with it, the rituals that keep body and spirit clean. It is time to learn how people here greet the dawn, how they wash, purify, and prepare themselves to meet the world. You take one last breath of the cool morning air and start toward the cluster of soft voices rising from somewhere ahead. The sunlight is still new, still gentle, its warmth just beginning to press through the mist that lingers over the village. As you walk, the earth feels damp beneath your feet, carrying the faint scent of last night's dew. Somewhere nearby, a cow shakes its ears, bells chiming softly, as if greeting you to the day. Before long, you reach the communal well. It sits in an open clearing surrounded by a ring of smooth stones, each one worn by decades of passing feet. A wooden beam stretches overhead, holding the rope and terracotta bucket that disappear into the darkness below. Around the well gather your new neighbors, men and women wrapped in simple cloth, hair still tousled from sleep, voices hushed in that early morning way, where even sound seems reluctant to disturb the world. Someone pulls the bucket up with a wet clatter, water splashing over the rim as they wrestle it to the side. A few droplets arc through the air, shimmering briefly in the sun before landing on your arm. They're icy, surprisingly so, and you understand instantly why everyone here looks both awake and mildly traumatized at the same time. You crouch near the well just as others do, cupping your hands in anticipation. Around you, people whisper mantras between breaths. The sound is soft and rhythmic, like a pulse that binds the village together. No one chants loudly. There is no need. The words seem meant for their own hearts, rather than for the sky. You dip your hands into the bucket. The cold hits you like a small, personal lightning strike. Instinctively you gasp, and a few villagers nearby glance your way with understanding smiles. You are not the first newcomer to underestimate the chill of well water at dawn. Some splash themselves boldly, with swift movements that seem almost military. Others brace slowly, as though convincing their souls to re-enter their bodies after every splash. You try again, this time committing to the act. Water rushes over your face and down your neck, shocking at first, but somehow clarifying. Your breath steadies, your skin tingles. The fog in your mind clears a little more with each handful. Beside the well sits a small array of cleaning supplies laid out on a flat stone. There's a bowl filled with fine grey ash, sifted from last night's cooking fire. Someone shows you how to pinch a bit of it between your palms, how to rub it lightly along your arms, until it forms a faint, silky paste. It feels strange, gritty, yet somehow cleansing. When you rinse it away, your skin feels smoother than you'd expect from something so simple. You pick up a few neem leaves next, their scent sharp and earthy. Villagers crush them between their fingers before scrubbing them along the skin, a natural defense against bacteria, insects, and probably spirits too stubborn to mind their own business. A woman tells you neem keeps the body pure and the skin strong. Another adds that it keeps children from scratching at everything. Both statements appear equally true. Just as you begin to appreciate the steady rhythm of the morning, splash, scrub, splash again, a shrill squeak breaks through the quiet. A towel has disappeared from its owner's hands. Actually not disappeared, been stolen. A small monkey, quick as an arrow and proud as a king, swings up onto the well's beam, holding the cloth triumphantly between its feet. Groans rise from the villagers. Apparently this scoundrel has a reputation. The monkey shakes the towel like a ceremonial banner, chirping smugly before darting into the nearest tree. A few people laugh. Others mutter about that menace. And you, caught somewhere between amusement and bewilderment, make a mental note to guard your belongings more fiercely. The monkey, meanwhile, vanishes into the leaves with the confidence of someone who knows no one here will climb after him. With your washing done, you stand and let the morning air dry your skin. The sun is higher now, warming the ground and softening the sharpness of the earlier chill. Villagers begin to disperse, some carrying filled pots of water balanced expertly on hips, others heading toward their courtyards to sweep away fallen leaves and prepare the first meal of the day. A quiet hum of life spreads through the village like a slow rising tide. As you prepare to return to your hut, you notice a young girl struggling with a pot nearly as large as she is. She steadies it, adjusts her grip, and walks on with practiced determination. You begin to see how central water is here, not just for washing, but for cooking, drinking, cleaning, and ritual. Every drop is carried, fetched, guarded, respected. And every task connected to it shapes the rhythm of daily life. The well fades behind you as you walk along the path, the earth warming under the lengthening sunlight. You can still feel the bite of cold water on your skin, still hear the soft chant of morning prayers swirling like mist in your memory. The day ahead is unfolding, full of tasks and discoveries you've barely begun to understand. And as you think of the girl carrying her pot, the villagers washing their faces, the monkey guarding its petty treasure, you begin to wonder where this precious water comes from, what depths it travels through, and what dangers or blessings it gathers along the way. Those questions accompany you as you walk, carried lightly on the breeze, leading you toward the deeper understanding of how this ancient world finds, protects, and survives on its most essential element. As you walk away from the well, the path widens, weaving between small homes and fields still wrapped in morning quiet. Women pass you, carrying water pots that sway with practiced balance, and children hop over puddles left by last night's brief drizzle. Everywhere you look, life seems to orbit around this element you've barely begun to understand. It becomes clear that if you want to survive here, not just endure, but truly live, you'll need to learn far more about the ways water shapes this ancient world. And so you follow the path toward where the land slopes downward, where the scent of damp clay thickens and the air hums with the murmur of moving currents. At the bottom of the slope, you catch your first glimpse of the river. It is not grand in this moment, not the sweeping, mythic vision described in ancient texts, but a wide, gentle flow, drifting between muddy banks lined with reeds and flowering weeds. Yet there is a quiet dignity to it, a feeling that this river has watched countless generations come and go, each one bending toward its waters the way plants bend toward sunlight. A pair of women stand knee-deep near the shore, washing clothes by slapping them rhythmically against flat stones. The sound echoes across the water like a steady heartbeat. Nearby, a man fills 2 enormous clay jars, pausing occasionally to mutter a small prayer before lowering them below the surface again. No one treats the river casually. Even the children splashing on the far bank do so with the kind of playful reverence that suggests they know they are being watched. Not by parents, but by the river itself. You approach the edge carefully, your toes sinking into cool, silty mud. The water glides past your feet, smooth and deceptively calm. Beneath its surface, streaks of sediment swirl like pale wisps, shifting patterns shaped by the river's hidden moods. A villager notices your hesitation and chuckles. "If you stare long enough," he says, "you'll see the river thinking." You smile, unsure if he's joking. But as you watch the current eddy and curl, you begin to believe him. He gestures upstream, where the water widens and turns slightly. The monsoon filled her well this year, enough for washing, drinking, blessing, and maybe enough patience for our foolishness. You follow his gaze, imagining torrents of rain cascading down from distant hills, feeding this gentle giant. He tells you how each year the river behaves differently, sometimes generous, sometimes temperamental, sometimes outright vengeful. Wells dry up or overflow. Streams appear where there were none the year before. Water in this era is not a utility. It is a personality. And unpredictable personalities demand respect. As you crouch and scoop a handful of river water, a small green shape pops its head through the surface not far from you. 2 bulbous eyes blink, then another pair, and another. A whole assembly of frogs, watching you as though judging your river etiquette. One lets out a croak that sounds suspiciously like a scolding. The villager laughs. They are the guardians. They tell us when the water is good and when it is questionable. You nod, slowly withdrawing your hand. The frogs blink again, satisfied, and sink one by one back into the milky green depths. Your respect for the river rises several notches. As you continue exploring, you learn how villagers decide what water can be used and how. Some wells are meant for drinking, carefully covered with woven mats to keep insects and leaves out. Others are meant only for bathing. A few, particularly unpredictable ones, are visited with offerings: a pinch of rice, a flower, a whispered request for safety, because superstition and practicality walk hand in hand in this world. You also learn the purification rituals. If you want drinking water, it must be boiled in a clay pot until bubbles rise steadily, the surface trembling as though the water is preparing to tell you a secret. Sometimes herbs are added, tulsi leaves dropped gently onto the surface, bits of dried ginger, even charcoal that binds impurities. Water here is not taken for granted, it is prepared. The villagers show you how to test clarity by holding a pot of water up to the sunlight, tilting it until the rays pass through the liquid. If the light scatters cleanly, the water is good. If it bends strangely or reveals floating specks, best save it for washing floors or feeding stubborn goats. They tell you stories of rivers that dried overnight, of springs that suddenly flowed with miraculous sweetness, of wells that became poisonous after a single storm. Water is a teacher, they say. It teaches patience, awareness, gratitude, and swift action when necessary. You look at the river again, its rippled surface catching the morning light. It is beautiful, yes, but also dangerous in its own quiet way. A friend when honored, a foe when ignored, an occasional teacher when life becomes too complacent. And as you prepare to leave the riverbank, your stomach gives a soft, insistent growl. The villager grins. "Ah," he says, "the real lesson begins. What you drink is important, but what you cook with that water, that decides the day." Food, of course. Water dictates everything about it. How it's prepared, how it tastes, how nourishing or risky it might be. And now, as hunger nudges you gently forward, you turn back toward the village, ready to learn how this world transforms simple grains and fresh water into the meals that sustain body and spirit alike. You walk on, feeling the river's presence behind you like a steady ancient whisper, guiding you toward the next chapter of survival. As you make your way back up the slope from the river, the scent of warm grain drifts toward you, soft, comforting, unmistakably inviting. Your hunger, which had merely whispered before, now speaks with much clearer intentions. A few villagers pass carrying small baskets wrapped in cloth, and the expressions on their faces tell you everything you need to know. Breakfast is beginning. You follow the aroma as though tugged by an invisible thread, weaving through courtyards where the first fires of the day have been lit. Thin columns of smoke rise from clay stoves, curling lazily into the morning air. The village is officially awake now. Pots clatter, children chatter, and somewhere a cow voices an opinion no one asked for. A woman beckons you toward her small open-air kitchen, a place defined not by walls, but by the neatness of its tools. A round clay stove sits at the center, glowing faintly from the embers inside. Next to it, a flat stone folder holds flattened rice, known here as poha, soaking gently in a small bowl of water. The grains are pale and soft, waiting to transform. She stirs them slowly with her fingers, then adds a drizzle of honey, its golden sweetness glistening in the sunlight. A splash of fresh yogurt follows, thick and cool, swirling into the mixture like clouds drifting across a pale sky. She gestures for you to try it, and you take a cautious bite. The taste is simple but grounding. Soft grains, mellow sweetness, a hint of something tangy and refreshing. It isn't the kind of breakfast that shouts for attention. It's the kind that reassures you, that promises you'll have enough strength to begin the day's work. Nearby, another household prepares lentils. A pot bubbles gently over a small fire, its surface dotted with mustard seeds snapping softly like tiny fireworks. A few curry leaves dance in the heat, releasing an aroma that seems to wrap itself around your senses. The man stirring the pot glances up and says, half teasing, half stern, "Careful. If you praise it too much, the village cook will think you're plotting to steal her job." You smile, learning quickly that in this village, food is more than sustenance. It is diplomacy. There is an art to accepting what is offered, an etiquette to how much you compliment someone's cooking, a delicate dance in determining who cooked first, who cooked last, and who regularly forgets to add salt. The villagers can recite these patterns the way others recite prayers. But the real power lies with the designated village cook, a middle-aged woman with impressive forearms and a gaze sharp enough to curdle milk. She runs the communal kitchen used during festivals and large gatherings. And though she is perfectly kind-hearted, she is not a woman to cross lightly. Stories circulate about the time someone suggested adding less turmeric to her lentils. That person is still spoken of in whispers, as though they wandered too close to the sun and were forever changed. You begin to notice how meals here reflect the mood of the land itself. If the harvest has been kind, breakfast bowls brim with fruits, curd, and fluffy steamed cakes made from fermented batter. If the monsoon overstayed its welcome or pests were overzealous, meals become simpler: flattened rice, watery porridge, or lentils stretched with creativity and prayer. On some mornings, villagers mix sattu, roasted grain flour, with water and jaggery, rolling it into small, energy-rich balls. These are practical, portable, and beloved by farmers heading into the fields. They joke that sattu doesn't just fill the stomach, it convinces the stomach to stop complaining until evening. Every ingredient tells a story of soil, season, and labor. As you sit beneath a neem tree with your bowl of poha, listening to the village ease into its daily rhythm, you begin to understand how interconnected everything is. The flavor of your breakfast depends on the weather. The weather shapes the crops. The crops shape the work. And the work shapes the day. A cow wanders past, glancing at your food with mild interest. Someone calls out that the same cow was generous this morning, giving more milk than usual. Breakfast, it seems, can hinge on the temperament of a single animal. You make a note to treat this particular cow with the reverence of a minor deity. You finish your meal slowly, savoring the last cool traces of yogurt and honey on your tongue. Around you, villagers begin gathering tools: hoes, baskets, sickles polished to a dull gleam. Their movements have a quiet determination, steady and rhythmic. Breakfast may be gentle, but the work ahead is not. A boy runs past carrying a bundle of seedlings, his feet barely touching the ground. A woman follows, moments later, balancing a basket of seeds on her hip. The flow of bodies toward the fields grows like a river meeting its course. You watch them move, realizing that this daily migration is the heart of the village. And as you rise to join them, the morning sun finally lifts above the horizon, washing the fields in gold. It becomes clear that to truly understand this place, you must step into the agricultural world that sustains it, where soil meets sweat, and life begins again with every seed pressed into the waiting earth. Your bowl now empty, you wipe your hands on a cloth and rise, drawn by the subtle but steady pull of movement toward the open land. The village cook gives you a brief nod of approval. Apparently, you've eaten properly, praised appropriately, and avoided her legendary wrath. A good beginning to any day. Ahead, the fields stretch out like great patchwork blankets of green and gold. Farmers walk with tools slung over their shoulders, children scamper around carrying seed baskets, and oxen lumber along with the resigned patience of creatures who know they are indispensable. It feels as though the entire village is flowing toward the fields in one synchronized breath, and you let yourself be carried along with the tide. Soon the soft soil gives under your feet, warm and slightly sticky, clinging to your heels, like a reminder that every step here is shared with the earth. Rows of crops extend across the land, some freshly sprouted, others tall enough to whisper when the breeze moves through them. A farmer waves you over, handing you a wooden plow with a grin that suggests amusement at your eagerness, or perhaps at your soon-to-be-discovered inexperience. 2 oxen, mighty and calm, stand yoked to the plow. Their horns curve upward like polished crescents, and their tails flick lazily at flies that seem to fear no living creature. not even 1,000th of times their size. You step behind the plow, gripping the handles firmly. The farmer gives the command. The oxen lean forward, and you are nearly pulled face first into the furrow. The villagers chuckle softly, not mockingly but knowingly. They've all stumbled behind a plow at some point in their lives. Straightening yourself, you dig your heels in and try again. This time you manage a wobbly but respectable line through the soil. The earth parts before the blade, rich and dark, releasing a scent that feels older than memory. As you work, the rhythms of the fields begin to reveal themselves. Some villagers sow seeds in the freshly turned earth, moving with practiced efficiency. Others carry water from nearby channels, letting it flow into narrow trenches that run like lifelines along the edges of each plot. Everywhere, motions repeat in steady cycles. Plowing, sowing, watering, weeding. Each task is woven into the fabric of survival. You begin to notice the layers of organization that guide this world. Certain families oversee the oxen. Their lineage has tended cattle for generations. Others manage the irrigation paths, ensuring water reaches every plot without waste. Some work the land directly, while others craft the tools or prepare the food that sustains laborers. The roles aren't rigid cages, but long-standing patterns, like threads in a tapestry that holds the village together. A boy beside you scatters seeds with enviable accuracy, flicking his wrist just so, ensuring even spacing. He tells you which crops belong to which families, which portions of the field are communally tended, and which plots are offerings for seasonal festivals. You realize the land isn't just physically divided, it's also symbolically shared. Every furrow carries meaning, every boundary tells a story, and every harvest is a collective breath held between gratitude and uncertainty. Season dictates everything. When the monsoon arrives, the village becomes a flurry of frantic preparation. When the sun scorches the ground in high summer, work slows to a pace that matches the heat. When winter cools the air, wheat and barley thrive under crisp skies. The farmers speak of seasons like relatives, sometimes generous, sometimes irritable, sometimes wildly unpredictable, but always essential. As you walk between plots, trying not to step on insects that seem to treat your feet as temporary shade, you realize how alive the fields truly are. Ants march with military precision. Beetles the size of your thumb meander through small forests of grass. At one point, a grasshopper leaps directly toward your face with heroic confidence, landing on your shoulder as if claiming it in the name of its grass kingdom. The nearby farmers laugh gently and tell you the insects were here first. You should learn to share. Hours pass in a blur of sweat, sunlight, and repetitive motions that gradually shape themselves into something almost meditative. Your muscles ache, but not unpleasantly. The plow grows less foreign in your hands. The oxen begin trusting your movements enough not to glance back at you every few steps. For a brief, grounding moment, you feel completely connected to the earth beneath you. Its warmth, its promise, and its demands. As the sun climbs higher, the fields shimmer with heat, and farmers pause to drink water stored in earthen pots. You sit with them beneath the shade of a lone banyan tree, the village spread out behind you, the fields stretching endlessly before you. From this vantage point, you begin to see how everything fits together. The huts, the well, the fields, the people, they are not separate pieces but parts of an intricate living whole. The boy beside you points toward the village. When the fields rest, the village works, he says simply. You follow his gaze and notice how people not in the fields today sweep courtyards, repair tools, tend animals, or carry goods between homes. The social structure extends beyond farming. It shapes commerce, hierarchy, rituals, and the quiet currents of daily life. As you stand again and feel the soft soil shift beneath your feet, you understand that the fields are just one part of a much larger system, one that shapes how people live, work, worship, and survive together. And as your footsteps lead you back toward the cluster of homes, back toward the sound of children laughing and elders discussing the day's tasks, you realize you are stepping into the heart of that system now. The village awaits, ready to reveal the patterns and customs that bind its people into a single resilient community. As you leave the fields behind, brushing loose soil from your hands, the sounds of the village rise to meet you. Livelier now, fuller, humming with the kind of energy that only appears once the morning's hardest labor has been completed. The path widens again, transforming from soft earth to the well-trodden, sun-warmed ground between homes. One step at a time, you move from the steady rhythm of farming into the beautifully unpredictable pulse of community life. It doesn't take long to realize that the village is a world of its own, a living organism stitched together with noise, motion, and an endless parade of personalities. A pair of children dart past you, one chasing the other with a stick held like a heroic weapon. The smaller one squeals with delight as they zigzag between clay pots, goats, and a cow who responds to the commotion by flicking her tail in mild annoyance. The cow continues her slow, determined walk as though she owns not only this path but perhaps the entire village. In her mind, she probably does. Under the shade of a neem tree, a group of elders sit in a loose circle, deep in discussion. Their voices rise and fall with the cadence of seasoned debaters. You catch snippets of their conversation, philosophy, ethics, stories from the epics, and the occasional good-natured argument over whose memory is failing and whose never worked properly to begin with. Even from a distance, you can feel the weight of their presence. These are the ones who hold the village's memories, its wisdom, its unwritten laws. One of them taps his walking stick for emphasis as he proclaims that the mind is the only battlefield where true victory matters. Another insists that no battle can be won without a full stomach. The others nod thoughtfully, and somehow both statements are accepted as equally profound. You continue moving, absorbing everything. Vendors shout from small wooden stalls, offering fruits, grain, or simple cloths dyed in shades of turmeric, indigo, and madder. A potter sits outside his workshop, spinning clay on a foot-driven wheel. His hands move with quiet mastery, coaxing shape after shape into existence. Pots for water, bowls for cooking, lamps for evening prayers. Each piece is smoothed with a rhythm that feels both ancient and entirely present. Children pause to watch him work, eyes wide, whispering guesses about what form the next lump of clay will take. One child claims confidently that it will be a pot shaped like a mango. Another says it will be a lamp so bright it can call the gods. The potter simply smiles without correcting either. Creativity, after all, begins in imagination. A woman nearby is weaving baskets from dried reeds, her fingers flying with a speed you envy. She never looks down. Her hands know the pattern by heart. As she works, she chats with a neighbor about who said what, to whom this morning, and why it absolutely matters, even though, by the sound of it, it probably doesn't. Gossip here travels faster than arrows, and once released, it finds its target unfailingly. You quickly learn that the village has an entire communication network more efficient than any messenger. Say one careless sentence near the well, and by noon the potter will be shaping a pot inspired by your misstep. The cook will be muttering your name into her lentils, and 3 elders will be debating whether your words reflect deeper philosophical confusion. Yet none of it feels malicious, just part of the constant pulse that keeps the community connected. Livestock wander among the people with absolute confidence. Goats snatch at stray leaves left on the ground. Chickens dart beneath woven fences. And one curious calf tries to nibble your sleeve as though testing whether you are edible. You gently push it away, and it responds by licking your wrist instead, which you interpret as either affection or negotiation. Everywhere you look, life is interwoven. People helping one another, sharing tools, calling out greetings, occasionally arguing but always within the boundaries of familiarity. No one is isolated. Everyone belongs to someone's story. As you walk deeper into the village center, you notice the small but essential workshops tucked between the homes. The blacksmith's forge crackles as he shapes iron into sickles and nails. The carpenter saws through wood, producing planks destined to repair carts or strengthen door frames. A woman sits with a spindle, drawing fine threads from cotton that will later become cloth. A group of young men repair a broken wheel, testing its strength with laughter and playful shoves. These crafts, quiet, steady, necessary, are the backbone of daily survival. Without them, the fields would be unworkable, the homes unprotected, and the meals uneaten. You pause, watching the potter lift a freshly shaped vessel from his wheel. He places it carefully on a tray to dry, nods to you, and says, "A village is not built on soil alone, it's built on hands." And as you take in the bustling scene around you, the weaving, pounding, shaping, stitching, you begin to understand the truth of that statement. The village breathes through its labor. Its identity is formed not only in the fields, but in the steady hum of tools and the craftsmanship passed through generations. A breeze drifts through the open reed fences, carrying the smell of wet clay, burning charcoal, and freshly cut wood. It is a scent that feels grounded, rooted, unmistakably alive. You realize there is still so much more to learn, so many crafts and trades that shape the rhythm of life here. And as your curiosity pulls you toward the nearest workshop, eager to understand how these tools and creations support the village, you step naturally into the world of the artisans whose hands shape survival itself. The rhythmic thud of a hammer draws you farther along the path, carrying you toward a corner of the village where the air grows warmer and the sounds sharpen. The laughter of children fades behind you, blending into the hum of daily bustle, until the clear, metallic ring of labor becomes the dominant note. Here, in this pocket of heat and dust and focused attention, lies the village's quiet engine, the hands and hearts that shape the tools everyone depends on. You approach the blacksmith's workshop first, guided by the glow of his furnace. The forge sits beneath a simple shelter of wood and packed earth, its fire contained within a stone hearth that breathes heat like a slumbering beast. The blacksmith himself stands over an anvil, forearms corded with muscle, sweat tracing paths down his neck as he lifts a glowing strip of iron with long tongs. The metal glows orange, almost alive, and when his hammer strikes it, sparks burst outward like tiny shooting stars scattering across the dusty ground. He doesn't look up at first. You learn quickly this is not out of disrespect, but because the metal demands attention. Strike too softly and the tool will be weak. Strike too late and the heat will slip away. Everything here depends on precision at just the right moment. When he finally acknowledges you, he offers a brief nod before lifting the hammer again, shaping destiny one blow at a time. Nearby rests a row of finished tools, sickles for harvest, nails for building, arrowheads for hunters and warriors, each one smooth, sharp, and essential. He picks up one and hands it to you. It's heavier than you expect, its edge gleaming with blunt promise. Tools feed a village, he says. Weapons protect it. Both come from the same fire. His hammer rises, falls, rises again. Steady, certain, ancient. You leave him to his work, your ears still ringing faintly with the rhythm of molten creation. A few steps away stands the carpenter's shaded domain, where the scent of fresh wood greets you even before you see him. His workshop is a symphony of shavings, thin curls of wood scattered across the ground like pale petals. The carpenter works with quiet focus, drawing a blade along the length of a wooden beam, smoothing it into the framework of a cart. His tools are simpler than the blacksmith's, but no less powerful. A well-carved yoke, or tightly fitted wheel, can determine whether oxen pull smoothly across fields or struggle through the day. He beckons you closer, guiding your hand along a half-finished cart frame. The grain of the wood feels warm and smooth beneath your fingers, each line revealing years of growth. Wood listens, he explains softly. Treat it well, and it moves with you. Rushing it only makes for broken wheels. You watch as he shapes spokes for a new chariot wheel, each stroke deliberate. It becomes clear that carpentry here is not only a craft, it is a dialogue with the material, a relationship of patience and respect. Not far from him, the potter sits at his wheel, spinning clay with a grace that feels almost meditative. The wheel hums under his feet as he coaxes wet clay upward, his hands steady, guiding the soft mound into a vessel that seems to appear from the earth itself. Every pot he creates has a purpose: storing grain, carrying water, holding oil, cooking meals, offering prayers. Without these vessels, life in the village would collapse. He finishes shaping a pot and lifts it carefully, placing it in a shaded area to dry. Clay is forgiving, he says with a warm smile. It lets you start over, again and again. Not like iron, not like wood, but everything has its place. You watch him work for a while, mesmerized by the wheel's steady turning and his hands' effortless mastery. As you drift between these artisans, a realization settles over you. This village thrives on the balance of their work. Iron for strength, wood for structure, clay for sustenance. They build the bones and sinews of daily life, and yet their influence reaches even beyond the fields and kitchens. You begin to notice weapons in the mix: arrow shafts drying in the sun, spear tips cooling on the forged stones, shields carved from sturdy banyan wood. Tools, yes, but tools that belong to another kind of laborer entirely. A young man approaches the carpenter's stall, carrying a bundle of straight, slender branches. His arm muscles flex beneath his tunic, and he moves with the confidence of someone trained in both discipline and danger. The carpenter inspects the branches, nods, and begins shaping them into arrow shafts. The blacksmith steps over moments later to check the balance of a newly forged blade. A potter brings water to wet the leather bindings for a sword hilt. You watch as each artisan contributes to a single weapon, not for aggression, but for the warriors who must protect the village and uphold Dharma. The process is solemn, purposeful, almost sacred. The young man notices your curiosity. Warriors don't stand alone, he says. We carry the work of every hand in this village. Their skill becomes our strength. The air shifts around you, not ominous, but charged with the awareness that the world beyond this peaceful village is wider, harsher, and woven with conflicts older than memory. The artisans shape the tools, yes, but others must learn to wield them. As the young man walks away with the newly crafted spear, you feel a pull, a curiosity toward the path that leads from creation to action, from craft to combat. And without quite realizing it, your feet begin to follow the steady rhythm of footsteps toward the training grounds, where warriors to be learn to survive not just with tools, but with their own bodies' instincts and resolve. The young warrior disappears down a narrow dirt path lined with tall grasses, and something in you, curiosity, pride, or perhaps an unearned sense of bravery, nudges you to follow. The sounds of the artisans fade behind you, replaced by sharper, more deliberate noises. The thud of feet hitting packed earth, the swish of arrows cutting through air. The barked commands of a teacher who appears to believe subtlety is a sign of weakness. You soon arrive at an open clearing ringed by neem and banyan trees, their shade forming a natural boundary around the training ground. Several young men and women stand in rows, each holding a longbow taller than you remembered bows being in stories. The bows curve with an elegance that contrasts sharply with the tension in the air, an atmosphere thick with effort, sweat and determination. A teacher with arms like carved stone watches you approach. His expression does not change, but his eyes assess you as though measuring your suitability as a future warrior or future cautionary tale. Without speaking, he thrusts a bow into your hands. It is heavier than expected, much heavier. You nearly drop it, catching it at the last moment with what you hope looks like grace but almost certainly does not. "Stand," he says simply. And you do, though you suspect your version of standing differs from his. He steps behind you and adjusts your feet, sliding one leg forward with a firm nudge. "Wider," he instructs. Then he pushes your shoulders down. "Lower." Then he places the bow upright in your hands. "Straighter." Within seconds, you realize you are not standing but being sculpted. When he steps away, your arms tremble, though the pose itself feels solid enough, like a tree trying very hard to imitate another, more confident tree. "Draw," he says. You pull at the bowstring. Nothing happens. The string barely moves, and the muscles in your arms begin sending frantic messages of protest. You tug harder. The bow responds with all the enthusiasm of a mountain. Several students try not to laugh. You hear one whisper, "The bow is stronger than his determination." The teacher shoots them a look that instantly quiets the field. "Strength comes," he says, returning his attention to you. "But humility must come first." You draw again, and this time the string gives, just a little, just enough for you to feel the raw power coiled within the bow's curve. You exhale, in surprise. The teacher nods approvingly. "Good. Again. Breathe like you are part of the earth, not like you are fighting it." You try. You fail. You try again. Slowly your breath begins to match the rhythm around you. Each inhale presses the ground beneath your feet deeper into your awareness. Each exhale steadies your grip on the bow. You draw. The string moves farther. The teacher's eyebrow lifts in what might be the closest thing he offers to praise. Now comes the part where the arrow is involved. He places one in your hand, a long shaft of wood, feathered at one end, tipped with iron at the other. You fit it awkwardly against the string. The teacher adjusts your fingers. You inhale. You try to remember every instruction. Shoulders down, grip loose, eyes forward, breath steady, mind empty. Behind you, someone shouts, "Release!" You panic. The arrow fires prematurely, flinging itself into the dirt, several feet in front of you before skipping sideways toward a bush. A squirrel screams in outrage and bolts up a tree. The teacher sighs. "Not like that." But he does not take the bow from you. He waits. And once your pulse calms slightly, he tells you to try again. This time you anticipate the shout. You hold your ground. When "release" echoes again across the clearing, you let the string slip from your fingers with deliberate control. The arrow arcs beautifully into the air, then lands a bit too far left, striking a target's wooden frame instead of its center. But this time you hear scattered claps. The teacher inclines his head. "Better." You continue practicing, each shot teaching you something new, about patience, about breath, about the deceptively gentle curve of a bow that demands everything from you. You learn how to ground your feet, how to pull from your back instead of your arms, how to focus not on the arrow, but on the space you want it to reach. You also learn that warriors train under blistering sun and chilling wind, that they practice not for glory, but for necessity, and that every skill, archery, spear throwing, sword work, begins with discipline before it ever approaches heroism. Between drills, Students speak in low voices about legendary warriors, archers who could hit unseen targets, swordsmen who moved like wind across the battlefield, heroes whose stories shaped kingdoms. These tales aren't simply entertainment. They are lessons, reminders that greatness is not born, but forged slowly, painfully, with countless missteps and countless tries. As you shoot another arrow, this one hitting the outer ring of a target, you sense a shift inside yourself. Not confidence, exactly, but a deepening awareness of what it means to stand among those who train to protect, to uphold Dharma, to face conflict when it rises. And as the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the clearing, the teacher signals the end of practice. The students collect their bows and begin heading down a path that branches away from the village, a path that countless travelers, warriors, merchants, wanderers have taken for generations. You follow them, drawn by the promise of stories and movement, toward the ancient roads that connect kingdoms, carry rumors, and weave together the vast world beyond this quiet training ground. The students walk ahead in twos and threes, their bows slung across their backs, dust rising gently around their ankles. The training ground fades behind you, replaced by the soft rustle of wind moving through tall grasses. The air feels different out here, open, wandering, threaded with possibility. Soon the path widens, merging into a broad, sun-baked road that stretches toward the horizon like a story waiting to be told. You step onto it, and immediately the world feels larger. This is no village lane. This is a highway, ancient, winding, worn smooth by countless feet, hooves and wheels. A living artery connecting kingdoms, ideas, and destinies. The road is dusty, but not empty. Far ahead you see shapes moving. Slow shapes, fast shapes, shapes that seem to swagger more than walk. As you draw closer, the characters of the road reveal themselves. A caravan of merchants trudges forward, their oxen pulling carts stacked with bundles of cloth, so colorful they could rival the morning sky. One merchant balances a basket of spices on his hip, and the scent, sharp pepper, warm cumin, sweet cardamom, swirls around you even as he passes without breaking his stride. Another cart carries jars of oil wrapped in straw, clinking gently like they're whispering secrets inside their clay walls. Behind them walks a group of wandering monks in saffron robes. They carry nothing but water pots and the serenity of those who have mastered the art of needing little. One nods to you as he passes, his smile so calm it feels like a blessing. A nomadic family follows, guiding a pair of goats who seem quite convinced they are the leaders of this expedition. Children sit atop bundles strapped to a wooden cart, waving cheerfully at anyone who meets their eyes. Their mother hums a tune, and though the melody is unfamiliar, there is something ancient and comforting about it. Then comes the peacock. You hear it before you see it, a self-important tapping and a loud, proud call. The bird struts down the center of the road as though it personally owns every grain of dust. Its feathers shimmer in the sunlight, shifting colors like a living jewel. Merchants step aside. Monks step aside. Even the goats step aside. The peacock accepts all of this as no more than its due. You step aside as well, because you have now learned how hierarchy works on the ancient highways. Peacocks outrank everyone. As you continue along the road, you begin to notice how objects and voices intermingle. A merchant from the west sells copper beads. Another from the south trades salt. A traveler from the north carries wool, dyed in deep hues that seem to catch and hold the light. Goods from far-off regions mingle here, creating a tapestry of early economics, barter, negotiation, mutual benefit. And the stories travel too. A man with a traveling drum shares tales of a distant kingdom where elephants are trained to dance. A group of soldiers resting under a tree whisper news of political tensions brewing between rival clans. A juggler, practicing with stones as he walks, spins stories instead of balls, stories of kings who dreamed too boldly and sages who answered riddles meant to unravel fate. You realize something profound. The road is the true storyteller of Bharata. It carries not only goods, but dreams, myths, warnings, and hopes. Every footstep adds a new line. Every wheel print becomes a forgotten verse. As midday heat begins to shimmer on the road, you hear the creak of wooden axles behind you. Turning, you see a massive cart drawn by two powerful oxen. Its sides are carved with symbols of prosperity: lotus flowers, flowing rivers, wheels with many spokes. The driver nods as he passes, and you glimpse treasures inside: bolts of fine silk, carved sandalwood figurines, and jars sealed with beeswax. This one is bound for the city, a nearby trader tells you. Hastinapura, most likely. The name hangs in the air like a promise. Hastinapura, the great city, the heart of kingdoms. A place where stories are not just spoken, they are made. You continue walking, your pace now matching the slow, deliberate rhythm of the merchant's caravan. The road begins to widen, flattening out as wagon tracks grow more frequent. The scattered trees thin out, replaced by long stretches of open land. Travelers increase in number. Voices grow louder. Wheels grow more numerous. Dust rises in golden clouds as the sun dips lower. And then, far ahead, you see it. At first it appears only as a pale shimmer through the haze, but gradually the shape clarifies. Tall outer walls, sturdy and confident against the horizon. Within them rise towers, rooftops, banners fluttering boldly in the warm breeze. Even from a distance, the city feels alive, humming with the energy of thousands of souls carrying out thousands of stories. Hastinapura. The merchants straighten their posture. The monks adjust their robes. Even the arrogant peacock seems slightly more dignified as it approaches the gates, as though understanding the gravity of entering such a place. And you feel your own heart settle into a quieter, more attentive rhythm. The village was a home. The fields were a teacher. The artisans shaped survival. The warriors forged purpose. But here lies the world that binds them all together. You step forward, ready to cross the boundary between rural life and the beating heart of kingdoms. The city's gates loom ahead, and the noise of its bustling streets grows louder with each passing moment. It is time to enter Hastinapura. The road curves gently, funneling travelers toward the great stone gates. As you draw closer, the scale of Hastinapura becomes clearer. The walls rise high above you, thick and sun-bleached, carved with symbols of power and longevity. Guards in polished armor stand at attention, spears upright, eyes sharp. Yet their expressions are not hostile. Rather, they watch with the quiet awareness of people accustomed to greeting strangers from every corner of the land. The caravan slows, forming a loose queue. Oxen snort impatiently. Merchants adjust their goods, smoothing cloths and tightening knots. The peacock, unsurprisingly, marches straight through the center, as though the entire city has been built for its personal promenade. No guard stops it. No one dares. When your turn comes, a guard glances at you, then gestures you forward without fuss. You step beneath the towering archway, where the air cools briefly in the shadow before bursting into noise, color, and motion on the other side. Hastinapura breathes all at once. The first thing that hits you is the sound, a layered chorus of clattering wheels, ringing bells, vendors calling out prices, children laughing, and somewhere, a persistent flute player determined to be heard above it all. Then the smells: roasting grains, crushed jasmine, warm ghee, dust kicked up by rushing feet, and a far less poetic scent you suspect comes from a donkey with indigestion. Then the motion. Chariots rattle down narrow lanes, their drivers shouting warnings that no one seems to heed. A cow stands planted firmly in the middle of traffic, chewing cud with serene indifference as chariots swerve around her. Pedestrians flow like rivers between carts, baskets, and animals, each person moving with a confidence that suggests they were born navigating chaos. A mango vendor nearly collides with you, thrusting a bright yellow fruit inches from your face. Sweet as love, juicy as monsoon rain, try one, he declares, already slicing the mango with speed that makes you reconsider the safety of your fingers. Before you know it, he hands you a glistening slice. It tastes like sunshine trapped in edible form. As you continue deeper into the city, the market unfolds into sections. Spice sellers grinding brilliant orange turmeric, oil merchants pouring liquid gold into clay jars, potters displaying polished lamps, jewelers holding gems up to catch the light. Every stall competes with the next for attention, shouting louder, displaying brighter, gesturing grander. A woman selling cloth unfurls a bolt of silk, dyed in hues that ripple like a sunset. A metalsmith shows off delicate earrings, shaped like tiny crescent moons. A child attempts to trade a pebble for a sweet, and appears genuinely heartbroken when the vendor refuses. Amid the grandeur is grime. Puddles from rinsed vegetables, dust sticking to barefoot children, stray dogs napping in the middle of roads, and a pair of monkeys perched on a roof throwing fruit at passers-by with impeccable aim. It is a city of contrasts, noisy and graceful, chaotic and harmonious, messy and magnificent all at once. As you walk, the buildings begin to grow taller, shifting from simple mud brick homes to more intricate structures with carved pillars and painted facades. The streets widen slightly, though they remain crowded with life. The smells shift too, less fried dough and more sandalwood, incense, and polished stone. Someone tells you this is the administrative quarter, where ministers and officials live. People speak in low tones here, their movements more controlled, their clothing embroidered with finer threads. You pass scribes carrying scrolls, servants balancing trays, and guards patrolling with stern focus. Then another shift. The road gently slopes upward, and the noise behind you begins to fade. Ahead rises a massive compound of walls, gates, and towers. The air feels different here, as though the very wind knows to move more quietly. You have reached the outer boundary of the palace complex. The gates are adorned with carvings of elephants, horses, and mythic scenes. Warriors holding bows, sages deep in meditation, gods offering blessings to kings long past. Guards here stand taller, armor more polished, spears gleaming in the afternoon sun. They do not look unfriendly, but there is a gravity to their presence that tells you this place is not like the bustling market below. Visitors in fine garments wait in orderly lines, offering tokens, scrolls, or messages. You watch as a minister enters, draped in elegant robes, flanked by attendants holding palm leaf fans. A chariot carrying a noble family arrives next, wheels rolling smoothly over the polished stone road. Everything here feels elevated, not just in rank, but in purpose. And as you stand before the palace walls, hearing the distant echo of drums from somewhere within, you sense that you are on the threshold of another world entirely. A world where decisions shape kingdoms, where alliances shift like monsoon winds, and where life unfolds, not just as daily survival, but as legend. With the city at your back and the palace rising before you, you step forward, ready to discover the power and intrigue waiting behind these storied walls. A guard steps aside to let a line of visitors through, and you find yourself carried along with them, as though swept into the current of a river that flows only in one direction, toward power. The palace gates rise above you like silent judges, carved with scenes of ancient victories and celestial blessings. When you pass beneath them, the clamor of the city fades as though swallowed by stone, The air grows cooler, quieter, charged with a formality that nudges your spine straighter without asking permission. Inside, the palace complex unfolds like a world within a world. Wide courtyards paved with smooth stone gleam under the sun. Attendants in crisp garments hurry by, balancing scrolls or trays without spilling a single drop or losing a single step. Decorative ponds shimmer with lotus flowers, their petals drifting lazily across the water. Birds hop along railings carved with intricate patterns. Spirals, vines, symbols of prosperity, and occasionally scold you for walking too close. Everything here feels precise, intentional, measured. Even the shadows fall politely. As you move farther in, the murmurs of conversation reach your ears, soft, controlled, diplomatic. Ministers walk in pairs or trios, their discussions laced with words like treaty, harvest, and allocation of grain. They speak with the calm intensity of men who know a single careless sentence can erupt into days of chaos. A court attendant notices you lingering nearby and offers a gentle warning. If you must eavesdrop, do so quietly. Too much volume near a minister can shorten your life, or at least shorten the amount of places you're welcome to stand. You take the hint. The palace halls are lined with polished pillars, each wrapped at the base with garlands of fresh flowers. Servants sweep constantly, soft brush strokes that whisper against the floor. The scent of sandalwood incense drifts through the corridors, mingling with the faint metallic tang of weapon racks, stationed discreetly in shadowed alcoves. You soon reach the outer court, where nobles gather before entering the audience chamber. This is where etiquette is most closely watched, and you quickly learn that the palace has its own gravitational rules. Stand too near someone of higher rank, and a guard politely moves you aside. Speak before being spoken to, and an attendant raises an eyebrow so sharply it could cut glass. Fail to bow at the right moment, and 3 people correct you with synchronized coughs. Hierarchy here is not abstract. It is choreography. And everyone has rehearsed it but you. A young noble watches you stumble through a greeting and hides a smile behind his hand. "Don't worry," he whispers. "I made the same mistake my first week. Only my mistake was to bow so low I toppled forward into a minister. My father had to pretend I was possessed to excuse me. You attempt a more measured bow next time, and while imperfect, no one coughs in alarm. From the outer court you glimpse the throne room itself, a vast chamber lit by shafts of golden light. Rich tapestries hang from the walls, depicting scenes of gods offering wisdom to rulers of the past. Several nobles stand before the king, waiting their turn to speak. Their garments shimmer with fine embroidery. Their movements resemble slow, practiced flows of water. Yet even in this grandeur, there is an undercurrent of tension. Power is a delicate fabric, and everyone treads carefully to avoid fraying it. The young noble guides you onward, eager to escape the stifling formality. He leads you through a quieter wing of the palace, where children's voices echo from a shaded courtyard. Here, the future rulers and advisors of Bharata receive their education. A group of boys and girls sit cross-legged on woven mats, listening to a grey-bearded teacher who looks like he hasn't missed a sunrise prayer in decades. He explains principles of dharma, duty, righteousness, the sacred balance between action and restraint. His voice is calm but firm, carrying the weight of generations. Nearby, another instructor guides students through physical exercises, stances, breathing patterns, gentle movements, meant to strengthen both body and discipline. These are not warriors in the making, not yet. These are noble children being shaped into leaders, philosophers, decision-makers, who must one day hold the fate of thousands in their hands. The young noble beside you sighs. "This was my classroom for years," he says. "Lessons on diplomacy in the morning, philosophy in the afternoon, and etiquette all the time. A small girl recites a verse about truth. A boy debates the nature of justice. Another child practices forming letters on a palm leaf scroll with unwavering concentration. Here, education is not merely instruction, it is cultivation, a lifelong shaping of mind, spirit, and behavior. As you watch the students practice their mantras and breathing exercises, you feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Discipline here is deep-rooted, almost sacred. It extends beyond posture and speech, beyond rules and rituals, reaching into the very essence of how one must live. And as the lesson concludes, one of the teachers invites the students to gather their tablets and prepare for instruction in self-mastery and meditation, skills that prepare them for lives of responsibility far beyond palace walls. You follow them as they rise, sensing that the path ahead leads not outward toward the city, but inward, toward the quiet glades and forest hermitages where the sages of this age pass on a different kind of wisdom, one far older and deeper than courtly etiquette. Your steps carry you toward the contemplative world of ascetics and seekers, where philosophy is not merely taught but lived. Leaving the orderly hum of palace lessons behind, you follow a narrow corridor that opens into a shaded courtyard. A breeze carries the smell of damp leaves and distant smoke, and the sounds of the palace slowly fade behind you. Ahead stretches a winding footpath leading away from marble halls and precise etiquette towards something quieter, older, perhaps wiser. The young noble who had guided you so far pauses at the edge of the path and gestures forward. If you want to understand how we learn to live, he says, not just how we learn to rule, follow this trail. So you do. The palace disappears behind the trees as the path bends through a grove of sal and neem. Sunlight filters through the branches in soft, dappled patterns, and the air becomes filled with a subtle stillness, an expectant quiet, as though the forest itself is waiting for your arrival. Eventually, the trees part to reveal a cluster of simple huts arranged around a central clearing. Smoke curls slowly from a cook fire, and the murmur of chanting rises like music woven into the air. This is the Gurukula, the school where future scholars, warriors, advisors, and philosophers are shaped not by titles but by discipline. No walls surround it, no guards stand watch. The forest itself is the boundary, and the teacher, the guru, is the center of everything. Your first introduction to Gurukula life comes in the form of a group of children, returning to the clearing at a brisk pace, each carrying armfuls of firewood stacked so precariously they walk with the concentration of tightrope performers. Their clothes are simple, their hair tied neatly, their expressions determined. They place the wood in neat piles near the main hut before lowering themselves into cross-legged seats on the ground. A teacher steps out of the hut, his presence as quiet as the whisper of a turning page. His hair is gathered into a knot streaked with silver. His eyes hold the calmness of someone who has watched countless sunrises without ever rushing one. When he speaks, his voice is gentle but firm, like a river guiding stones. "You may begin," he says. And just like that, the chanting resumes. The children recite mantras with perfect rhythm, their voices rising and falling in unified cadence. Some close their eyes to concentrate, others keep them open, fixed on the teacher with unwavering focus. You realize they have likely been awake since long before dawn, beginning their day with prayer, then chores, then lessons. An unbroken chain of discipline. When the recitations end, the teacher gestures for a break. The children scatter with relief, some fetching water pots, others sweeping the grounds or tending the fire. Each student has tasks, and no one questions them. Responsibilities are part of their education, just as essential as memorizing verses or mastering texts. One boy sits beside you as he sharpens a wooden stick. "We wake when the stars still shine," he explains proudly. Guruji says discipline begins before the sun arrives, because if you can master your morning, the The day cannot defeat you. Another student chimes in, balancing a water pot on her hip. We memorize 1 verse a day, sometimes 2 if Guruji thinks we are being lazy. You wonder what lazy means in a place where the day starts before birds. The boy continues carving, shavings gathering in a neat pile. Guruji teaches us that knowledge must be carried lightly, like this stick. If you hold it wrong, it becomes a burden. Hold it correctly, and it becomes a tool. Nearby, older students sit under a banyan tree, engaged in a debate under the supervision of another instructor. Their discussion flows with the grace of seasoned thinkers: question, counterpoint, reflection, refinement. They speak of duty, truth, the nature of the self, and the delicate balance between desire and action. Their words carry the weight of ancient philosophy, yet their faces are youthful, earnest. This is not merely an academic school, it is a place where the body, mind, and spirit are shaped simultaneously, where sweeping the courtyard teaches humility, where firewood gathering teaches service, where chanting teaches focus, and where debate teaches discernment. You watch as the teacher leads the group to the edge of the clearing for meditation. The students sit in long rows, backs straight, hands resting on their knees. The forest hushes around them, birds quieting as though participating. The children close their eyes, and the teacher's voice becomes a soft guide. Breathe with the earth beneath you. Breathe with the sky above you. Breathe with the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Peace settles over the clearing like a gentle cloak. As you sit among them, letting your own breath fall into the cadence of the group, you begin to understand the deeper purpose of this place. It isn't just about preparing nobles for their duties or warriors for combat. It's about cultivating minds capable of wisdom, restraint, and clarity, qualities the world beyond this grove desperately needs. When the meditation ends, the students rise in silence, continuing their tasks with renewed focus. The teacher approaches you, offering a faint smile. To guide others, he says, one must first learn to guide oneself. His words linger long after he turns away, and as you leave the clearing, following another narrow path deeper into the forest, you sense a shift in the air, an opening toward an even older realm of knowledge. Hermitages lie beyond the trees, places where sages and ascetics have spent lifetimes wrestling with truths too vast for ordinary classrooms. Your feet move almost of their own accord toward that quiet world of seekers and wisdom. The path leading away from the Gurukula narrows into a gentle trail, half claimed by roots and fallen leaves. Birds chatter overhead, and the forest gradually shifts in tone, less playful, more contemplative. Each step carries you deeper into a realm where the world seems to breathe slower, as though time itself pauses respectfully before entering. You begin noticing signs of habitation, not marked by walls, but by subtle traces. A carefully swept patch of earth, a stack of firewood arranged with geometric precision, a clay pot left to cool near a stream. These are clues that you are approaching places where sages and hermits dwell, individuals who have traded the clamor of society for a quieter kind of pursuit. The first hermitage appears almost by accident. You realize you're standing in front of it only when a soft cough emerges from behind a tree, and a bearded man steps into view holding a bundle of herbs. His hair spills over his shoulders like a waterfall of silver threads, and his expression is serene enough to calm even the most chaotic mind. He nods at you, as though he has known for days that you would be walking this path. "Welcome," he says, voice warm as sunlight. "Have you come seeking wisdom? You consider this. You'd mostly come because your feet kept moving, but admitting that feels rude. So instead you offer a polite, non-committal smile. I'm open to learning." He beams, which you instantly realize was a tactical mistake. Within moments, he is explaining the nature of reality, using metaphors involving turtles, the wind, and the sound of a single grain of rice falling in an empty hall. You understand approximately 3% of it, but he speaks with such passion that interrupting would feel like disrespecting an entire lineage of metaphor-loving scholars. Eventually he pauses, giving you an opening to nod appreciatively and gently excuse yourself. Thank you. Truly. I will reflect upon the rice. He nods with deep satisfaction, clearly believing enlightenment is imminent. You walk on, wondering whether enlightenment is simply the art of appearing thoughtful at the right moments. Farther along the trail, you find another hermit sitting cross-legged on a flat rock beside a stream. His eyes are closed, his posture is perfectly straight. The water flows around him as though it knows better than to disturb his meditation. You watch him for several minutes, unsure whether he is deeply absorbed or simply asleep. Suddenly, without opening his eyes, he speaks. You breathe too loudly, he says gently. Oh, you reply, startled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. No apology needed, he continues, lifting one eyelid just enough to peer at you. Just observe your breath, let it soften. The forest will teach you if you let it. He gestures for you to sit beside him, and before you can decide otherwise, you find yourself mirroring his posture. The rock is cool beneath you. The trickle of water harmonizes with your heartbeat. You try to quiet your breath, but each attempt seems only to amplify its awkwardness. Relax, the hermit says with a small smile. You are not trying to impress the trees. After a few moments, your breath settles into something more natural, and a gentle calm spreads through your chest. The hermit nods approvingly, then closes his eyes again, disappearing back into silence. You sit beside him until your legs begin to tingle, then rise and offer a bow. He does not respond, but you sense he noticed. The next hermitage you encounter is livelier. A group of students gathered around a teacher, who appears to be explaining the concept of detachment using a mango as a prop. The mango passes from hand to hand, each student examining it as though expecting cosmic secrets to burst forth at any moment. One student notices you hovering at the edge of the circle. Come, she says brightly. Today we are learning not to crave fruit. Ironically, the mango smells incredible. The teacher offers you a seat and launches into a lecture about the ephemeral nature of desires, how attachment leads to suffering, and how one must learn to release longing, even for things as tempting as perfectly ripe mangoes. You try your best to nod sagely, even as your stomach betrays you with a faint grumble. When the lesson concludes, the teacher looks at the mango thoughtfully, then shrugs and takes a bite. Even detachment must be practiced in moderation. His students cheer. You realize sages are far more human than legends often claim. As you continue your journey from hermitage to hermitage, you begin to understand that this world of seekers offers more than philosophy. It offers a foundation, a grounding in stillness, humility, and awareness. Meditation becomes not a chore, but a way to align yourself with the rhythm of the land. Simple living becomes an invitation to step outside of ego, and the unsolicited lectures, though frequent, carry kernels of truth if you listen carefully. But you also sense something else stirring beneath these teachings, the expectation that every individual must understand their place within society. These lessons on self-awareness are not meant to isolate you. They are meant to prepare you for duty, for community, for dharma. As the forest path widens again and the sounds of distant voices drift toward you, you realize the hermits have given you what they can. The next part of your journey leads back toward the world of people, into the structure, expectations, and moral frameworks that shape life in this ancient age. Leaving the quiet forest behind, you feel the teachings of the hermits lingering around you like incense, subtle, fragrant, and impossible to ignore. But as the trees thin and the world widens again, the murmurs of society return. tugging you gently back towards civilization. You soon find yourself walking along a path where villagers, travelers, and nobles all cross the same dusty ground, their footsteps guided by something both simple and profound: Dharma. Here, duty is not an abstract ideal. It is the invisible lattice holding every life in place. A potter, shaping clay near the roadside, pauses long enough to greet you with a nod. Everyone has a role, he says, pressing his thumbs into the soft earth. Mine is to shape vessels. Yours? Still deciding, I think. Before you can protest, he adds, it is good to take your time. Clay collapses when rushed. And just like that, he returns to his wheel, leaving you with a philosophy lesson disguised as pottery advice. You walk on, observing how Dharma threads itself into every task around you. A woman balancing 2 heavy water pots steps aside so a group of monks may pass, her duty to her family yielding to their duty to spiritual pursuits. A farmer pulls his oxen to a halt to let a group of children cross the road, laughing as he tells them to study hard so they can give orders someday. The children roll their eyes but obey, already well trained in respecting elders even while resisting chores. A warrior in training practices sword forms nearby, each movement controlled, each breath measured. His face holds the seriousness of someone who knows that his duty may one day demand sacrifice. His teacher watches him with pride, his own dharma fulfilled through the student's progress. Everywhere you look, roles intersect, like strands of a vast woven fabric, a fabric made strong by purpose. Yet purpose, you soon learn, can be heavy. At a shaded rest stop along the road, you meet a traveling philosopher, one who seems delighted to lecture anyone within earshot. He sits cross-legged beneath a banyan tree, waving a palm leaf scroll with dramatic flair. The potter's dharma is to pot, he declares. The king's dharma is to rule. The warrior's dharma is to fight. But what, dear listeners, he says, fixing you with a piercing look, happens when duties collide? When morality and survival do not agree? A handful of villagers gather, curious. Even a cow wanders closer, though you suspect she is more interested in shade than philosophy. The philosopher continues, voice rising theatrically. Imagine a warrior ordered to defend a king he believes is unjust, or a potter asked to abandon his family to serve in battle, or a ruler forced to choose between law and compassion. Which duty prevails? Which dharma is true? Silence settles. A thoughtful, uneasy silence. A young woman speaks first. My dharma is to care for my mother, she says. If conflict came, I would choose her. A merchant disagrees. But what if the kingdom needed you? Without the kingdom, who protects your mother? The philosopher smiles, seeing debate blossom like a lotus. This, you realize, is his dharma, stirring minds, not settling answers. He turns to you. And you? What would you choose? You hesitate. Not because you don't have an opinion, but because you suddenly understand the enormity of the question. In this world, duty is not a single path. It is a web of responsibilities that sometimes support one another, and sometimes choke. The philosopher sees the uncertainty in your eyes and nods approvingly. Good. Doubt is the first step toward understanding. Dharma is not a rule, it is a compass. And compasses, he adds, lowering his voice, can spin wildly when storms approach. Storms, both literal and political, loom large in this age. Droughts challenge farmers' loyalty to their land. Feuds test friendships. The ambitions of kings ripple outward, shaping the destinies of those who never asked to be involved. As you walk again, the road brings you to a crossroads where travelers gather, each pulled by their own sense of obligation. A man heading south seeks a healer for his ailing brother. A young woman travels north to apprentice under a renowned weaver. A group of soldiers marches west, answering the call of their kingdom. Different roles, different duties, same underlying tension. Survival does not always bow to ideals. Later that afternoon, you sit beside a riverbank watching fishermen cast nets with the precision of ritual. One of them joins you, wiping sweat from his brow. "My dharma is simple," he says. "Feed my family, honor the river, be grateful." He pauses, then adds, "But what if the river dries? What if the fish disappear? What then? Do I change my duty? Or does duty change me?" The honesty in his question lingers. You realize now that dharma is not the peaceful, tidy notion it first appears. It demands constant re-evaluation, constant humility, constant courage. Sometimes it asks people to stand firm, other times to bend, and sometimes it forces them to choose between what is right and what is necessary. As the sun dips low, casting the river in amber light, you understand why this concept, so simple in theory, carries the weight of entire civilizations. Society expects everyone to fulfill their role, but society also trembles when those expectations are tested, and they will be tested. For beyond the calm river, beyond the quiet villages and bustling markets, conflicts simmer, rivalries between kingdoms, disputes between families, tensions between personal desire and communal duty. Your journey now leads toward those emerging conflicts, where dharma meets dilemma, and where survival is anything but straightforward. As the fisherman's words fade into the rippling current, you rise and follow the riverbank toward a distant cluster of voices. The calmness of dharma still lingers in your thoughts, but the world you walk back into is not one of peaceful contemplation. It is louder here, tense, charged, as though the air itself has been caught in an argument. Before long, the murmurs take shape into heated conversation, revealing a gathering of travelers, merchants, and local officials locked in a dispute. You edge closer, and the pieces fall into place. A messenger from a neighboring kingdom has arrived with troubling news. A border disagreement has escalated. One side claims old treaties. The other cites ancestral rights. Neither seems willing to yield. As the messenger speaks, you catch the familiar rhythm of political language, vague assurances, pointed implications, and that specific type of calm that is somehow more alarming than shouting. A merchant whispers to his companion, "This sounds like the Kuru family all over again." The name drifts through the crowd like smoke. Everyone knows the stories, the rivalries, the jealousies, the uneasy alliances within the great Kuru dynasty. Even though you stand far from Hastinapura now, the tensions of that lineage ripple outward across the land like the aftershocks of a distant earthquake. Rumors travel fast on the ancient highways, and they change shape as they move. Some say factions in the royal court are growing restless. Others speak of advisors pushing for expansion, of ministers warning restraint, of princes who cannot seem to coexist peacefully for more than a sunrise. Politics in this age are never simple. They are webs, sticky, layered, labyrinthine. A local official steps forward, trying to restore order. His voice carries the rehearsed authority of someone accustomed to managing disputes, but even he cannot disguise the worry in his eyes. "These quarrels between kingdoms," he says, "are not new, but they grow sharper each year. When dharma is strained, peace becomes delicate." Someone in the crowd mutters, "Or disposable." The official ignores the comment and explains the situation. Village borders being pushed, trade routes being taxed unfairly, warriors taking sides in matters that should never have reached them. The tensions feel like watching storm clouds gather on the horizon, not yet a tempest, but undeniably forming. As the group disperses, you walk alongside a traveling scholar who has been listening in silence. He strokes his beard thoughtfully and says, "Politics, my friend, are simply quarrels with better vocabulary." You choke back a laugh, but his expression remains serious as he continues. Alliances are like clay pots, useful, fragile, and prone to cracking if too much heat is applied. Today 2 kingdoms trade grain and silk. Tomorrow they claim the same land. Today cousins dine together. Tomorrow they dispute succession. You think of the palace, the nobles, the war trainees, the debates on dharma. Everything seems intertwined, spiraling towards something larger, heavier. The scholar gestures to the road. Walk with me. You do. As the path winds through scattered groves, he speaks of past feuds, the kind that begin with a single insult and end with entire villages displaced. He tells of alliances forged through marriages, and alliances destroyed by them, of treaties written in elegant script but ignored when convenient, of brothers who turn against brothers for the promise of a throne. Expectations, he says, can break a kingdom long before a sword does. Ahead you find a small outpost where warriors from different regions rest during their travels. Their armor bears distinct markings, one with a stylized bull, another with a crescent moon, another with a lotus. They speak in cautious tones, each trying to gauge whether the others pose threat or opportunity. The atmosphere simmers with unspoken distrust. When you approach, a young soldier looks up from polishing his spear. His expression is thoughtful, a little weary. People think war happens suddenly, he says. It doesn't. It grows. First in conversations, then in negotiations, then in accusations. By the time swords are drawn, the war has already been alive for years. Behind him, 2 older warriors argue quietly about which kingdom has rightful claim to a nearby stretch of farmland. Their disagreement is polite but sharp-edged, another reminder that political lines do not stay neatly on maps. They bleed into daily life, shaping relationships, shaping fear. You begin to realize something profound. War is not an eruption of violence, but a culmination of tensions that touch every layer of society. The potter feels it when trade routes close. The farmer feels it when borders shift. The noble feels it when alliances strain. The warrior feels it when orders grow vague, then pointed, then urgent. And you, standing at the edge of this uneasy gathering, feel it too. The scholar beside you watches the scene unfold with a resigned sigh. Conflict, he says, is the shadow dharma cannot escape. Even the greatest of virtues cannot prevent the world from turning toward violence when enough fears collide. As the sun begins to set, casting the landscape in muted gold, you sense the direction of your journey shifting. The peaceful days of wandering through villages and hermitages have given way to a harsher reality. Kingdoms are stirring, tensions rising, and the age itself seems to brace for upheaval. You walk on, now toward a world preparing, slowly, reluctantly, inevitably, for war. The last traces of sunlight fade as you leave the roadside outpost, and the air grows strangely still, as though the world is pausing to listen. Even the birds quiet their evening songs. The scholar who had walked with you turns back toward the village, offering only a final, somber nod before disappearing into the dusk. His departure leaves you alone with an unease that hums beneath your ribs, like a taut bowstring. War, it seems, is no longer a distant whisper. It is a murmur swelling into a chorus. You soon reach a settlement perched on a ridge overlooking the plains. Fires flicker in courtyards, but the usual chatter of evening meals is subdued. People speak in low tones, turning their heads toward shadows, as if expecting armed riders to emerge at any moment. You sit beside a well, where a group of villagers huddle together, listening to a traveler who claims to have come from the borders. "They're moving troops," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "Not openly, not yet. But caravans carrying grain and weapons have doubled, and I saw scouts, not ours. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Rumors, you realize, are the first soldiers of war. They travel fast, unsettle hearts, and carry fear from home to home long before any blade glints in daylight. At the edge of the settlement, a group of soldiers prepares for departure. Their armor is not ornate, just sturdy leather reinforced with metal plates, worn by long use. One of them checks the straps on a pack bulging with rations. Another sharpens the edge of a spear, dragging the whetstone with measured strokes that echo like a heartbeat. Nearby, a horse stamps nervously, sensing unrest in its rider. You approach them cautiously, and a young soldier meets your gaze. There is no bravado in his eyes, only the quiet acceptance of someone who has trained for this moment since childhood, yet still wishes it would never come. Orders came at dusk, he explains. We're not marching to battle. Not yet. Just reinforcing the border, showing presence. But the way he tightens his jaw suggests he knows showmanship often precedes bloodshed. Behind the soldiers, an elderly astrologer sits cross-legged before a small fire, tossing herbs into the flames. The smoke twists upward in spiraling ribbons, and he peers through it as though reading messages hidden in the curls. His expression darkens. You inch closer and he speaks without turning. When Mars rises angry and the moon wanes before its time, conflict follows. He shakes his head. And this year, the heavens churn like troubled waters. One of the warriors pauses to listen. So the stars want war? No, the astrologer replies. Men want war. The stars merely warn of the storms they stir. His words settle heavily in your chest. From the astrologer's fire, your path leads you downhill toward a makeshift training field, lit by scattered torchlight. Soldiers, experienced and green alike, practice maneuvers late into the night. Shields clash in rhythmic patterns. Archers test their aim against straw targets, swaying in the wind. A commander walks the lines, correcting stances, adjusting grips, reminding his troops that precision now may save their lives later. You notice the difference between this training and the lessons you witnessed earlier. There is no laughter, no gentle guidance, no patient correction. Every mistake carries the weight of consequence. A drill instructor shouts instructions with the urgency of someone racing against time. Hold your shield higher. Keep your stance low. You think the enemy will wait for your balance? A recruit stumbles, breathless. The instructor softens, just for an instant. Better to fall now than fall forever. The torches flicker, casting long shadows that dance like specters across the ground. As you continue walking, you find a hill overlooking the plains. From here, you can see faint glimmers of distant fires, other camps, other kingdoms preparing, positioning, anticipating. The horizon looks like a string of quiet embers waiting to ignite. This is how wars begin in the Dvapara Yuga, not with a trumpet blast or a single fateful act, but with uneasy silences, shifting allegiances, anxious stars, and the whispered realization that diplomacy is slipping through too many fingers. You sit on the hill for a long while, listening to the echo of distant drums carried on the breeze. They are not war drums, yet, but signals, messages sent across the plains to ready troops and reaffirm commands. The ground beneath you feels alive, tense, aware. The world is holding its breath. Eventually, a cold wind sweeps over the ridge, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and steel. You understand with a clarity that tightens your throat. The next step in your journey will plunge you into the heart of what these preparations truly mean. You rise, drawn forward by a mixture of dread and necessity. For the fires on the horizon are no longer embers, they are invitations. It is time to step onto the battlefield. The distant glow of campfires becomes brighter as you descend from the ridge. each step carrying you closer to a world where all the teachings of dharma, discipline, and diplomacy collide. The ground grows firmer beneath your feet, packed by countless soldiers who have marched this way before you. Soon, the murmuring chants of preparation give way to a sound far heavier, the low, rhythmic boom of war drums, calling warriors to formation. You reach the edge of a vast plain just as dawn breaks. The first rays of sunlight stretch across the horizon and illuminate a sight that feels suspended between beauty and terror. Thousands of warriors stand arranged in deliberate geometric formations, lines and arcs and wedges, each placement precise enough to resemble a living diagram. Time seems to slow, as though even the sun itself hesitates to rise fully over what is about to unfold. To your left, archers tighten the strings of their longbows. They lower themselves into steady stances, feet grounded, shoulders squared. Their faces are expressionless, not cold, but emptied of everything but focus. Each bowstring, plucked, produces a soft, deadly hum that vibrates through the air like the note of a growing storm. To your right, infantry soldiers form rows, shields interlocked, spears angled forward. Their breathing synchronizes in heavy, deliberate waves. Some murmur mantras under their breath, soft prayers to gods or ancestors. Others stare ahead, blinking slowly, as if trying to memorize the present before chaos tears it apart. Then the elephants arrive, massive, awe-inspiring creatures adorned in armor of bronze and leather, their trunks curling with restless energy. Their mahouts sit, perched on their backs, tapping instructions with the quiet authority of those who live in daily partnership with giants. The ground trembles beneath the elephant's weight, each step a reminder that war in this age is not fought by humans alone. Nearby, chariots roll into their positions. Two-wheeled thunderbolts, drawn by horses who snort clouds into the morning air. Drivers test the reins, while warriors stand poised behind them, gripping bows, spears, or maces. The wheels leave curved trails in the dirt, tracing the patterns of a dance, both ancient and violent. The drums quicken. Your heartbeat synchronizes with them, an involuntary merging of fear, awe, and something deeper, something human. You move through the ranks cautiously, unnoticed amid the flurry of preparation. A soldier adjusts the strap of his armor with trembling hands. Another pats his horse's flank, whispering quietly into its ear. A boy, no older than some Gurukula students, stands with a spear nearly twice his height, trying his best to hide the fear swimming behind his determined expression. A commander strides past you, voice ringing with authority. Steady your breath. Remember your training. Today, you uphold not just your kingdom, but your dharma. The soldiers straighten, shoulders lifting as though the words themselves grant strength. But war, you already sense, is not strengthened by ideals alone. A sudden horn blares across the plain, long and unbroken. In an instant, silence falls, a heavy, thick silence that pushes against your ears. Even the elephants pause, their great bodies swaying as though listening. For a moment, time freezes. You realize you are standing within the delicate breath that separates preparation from action. The suspended heartbeat before the world fractures into movement. Then the horn ends. The drums return, louder now, pounding through your bones. Orders fly down the lines. Shields rise. Bowstrings pull back. Chariots surge forward like unleashed wind. Elephants advance in slow, powerful strides, shaking the air with their charge. The battlefield erupts. Arrows darken the sky in sweeping arcs. Spears collide with shields in sharp metallic bursts. Horses neigh wildly as drivers maneuver chariots through forming gaps. Dust rises instantly, engulfing the field in a haze of movement, shapes flickering in and out of visibility like phantoms. Amid the chaos, you glimpse moments that strike deeper than the clamor. a warrior shielding a fallen comrade with their own body, a soldier pausing mid-strike, fear outweighing fury, a young archer whispering a final mantra before releasing his arrow, an elephant trumpeting in pain, its great form staggering. This is not the glorified battle told in epics or painted on palace walls. This is raw, unfiltered struggle, the place where dharma and survival collide in their harshest form. And beneath the noise, beneath the shouting and clashing and trembling ground, you feel something shift within yourself. A realization that war is not only a test of skill, but a challenge that presses against the deepest layers of heart and spirit. As the fighting intensifies, you retreat to a small rise overlooking the battlefield. From here, the movements appear almost choreographed, waves of humanity crashing against one another, receding, returning, reshaping the field again and again. But you know the truth. There is no choreography here, only countless individual choices, made in the heat of fear, duty, and desperation. A priest stands beside the rise, chanting softly, offering blessings to the souls who now ride the thin line between life and death. His voice is steady, but his eyes glisten. War takes more than it gives, he murmurs. Even victory leaves a shadow. The words settle over you like a shroud. As the sun climbs higher and the battle rages on, you understand that you are witnessing more than conflict. You are witnessing the weight of consequence, the emotional and spiritual scars carved into hearts long before wounds touch skin. And those scars, you feel, will lead you deeper into the aftermath of war, into the grief and reflection that follow, into the questions that cannot be asked while swords still clash. Your journey now turns toward what comes after the battlefield, where silence speaks louder than war drums. The priest's chant lingers in your ears long after you step back from the rise overlooking the battlefield. The clash of weapons and cries of combat still echo across the plains, but your focus shifts now, not to the movements of armies, but to the hearts beating within them. Soldiers hurry past in small groups, some returning briefly to regroup, others marching forward to reinforce the lines. Their faces are marked not only by dust and sweat, but by something deeper, something raw and human. This, you realize, is what courage looks like from only an arm's length away. It is not the shining, polished valor sung in tales. It is quieter, messier, trembling at the edges. Courage here breathes through clenched jaws and shaking hands, through breaths taken too quickly or too slowly, through decisions made in the instant between fear and duty. You find yourself walking among soldiers who have paused momentarily behind the lines, gathering strength before returning to the fray. A young man sits on a boulder, gripping the hilt of his sword with both hands. His knuckles are pale, his breath uneven. When you sit beside him, he glances at you as though trying to determine whether you're real or another ghost rising from the battlefield haze. "Are you afraid?" you ask softly. He lets out a strained laugh, one without humor. Everyone is afraid. Courage is just walking anyway. A commander approaches him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "Remember your breath," he instructs. Fear scatters the mind. Breath gathers it. The young man nods, inhales shakily, and the commander demonstrates, filling the belly, releasing slowly, grounding himself as though anchoring to the earth. You notice that warriors across the field do the same. Between clashes, they step back, close their eyes for a heartbeat, breathe deeply, recite mantras internally. A soldier sharpens his focus by running his thumb along the ridges of his shield. Another repeats a quiet promise to his family. A third murmurs a single prayer over and over, not asking for victory, but simply for strength to endure. Mental survival techniques. necessary armor long before iron touches flesh. Nearby, a group of archers huddle together. Their leader traces a small symbol of protection on each of their foreheads. Nothing elaborate, just a gesture reminding them they belong to something larger than this moment of terror. One archer whispers, "My teacher always said the mind shoots before the hand does." Another replies, "Then let us steady our minds." A charioteer tends to his horses, stroking their necks with deliberate calm. "If I panic," he murmurs, "they panic. If they panic, we die." He focuses on the rhythm of their breathing until it matches his own, forming a quiet bond that stills them both. Courage, you realize, is contagious, but so is fear, and these warriors work tirelessly to share one and silence the other. You venture closer to the edge of the battlefield again, watching as soldiers return to their formations. The sun now hangs high, glaring down like a stern witness. The air hums with tension as warriors brace themselves. Then a tremor of excitement ripples through the ranks. Whispers travel quickly from soldier to soldier, gaining volume as they move. Heads turn, eyes widen. The murmurs grow clearer. "They're here. The sons of Pandu. Look there." You follow their gaze to the far side of the field, where a new contingent arrives. Not merely soldiers, but legends in motion. Mounted warriors wearing armor that gleams even through the dust. Banners bearing unmistakable symbols. A golden bow, a raging lion, a conch shell, a blazing sun. Figures whose names are spoken in both reverence and awe. You feel the air shift as their presence settles over the battlefield like a second dawn. Leading them is a warrior with a bow slung over his shoulder, his stance calm and centered, his gaze piercing even from a distance. His aura is unmistakable, steady as a mountain, clear as a river's surface at dawn. The archers near you whisper his name with trembling admiration. Arjuna. Beside him rides a figure with a golden complexion, unarmed yet exuding a quiet power that seems to cradle the air itself. His eyes sweep the field not with fear, but with profound understanding. Keshava, someone breathes. Krishna himself. You feel your heart shift in your chest, as though witnessing not just warriors, but forces of destiny taking their place on the stage of history. Courage spreads through the ranks like fire catching dry grass. Soldiers who moments ago trembled now lift their weapons with renewed steadiness. Further down the line, another chariot arrives. Its warrior clad in gleaming armor, face resolute despite the weight of unspoken burdens. A murmur follows him too, though softer, tinged with something like sorrow. Karna, a name that carries both brilliance and tragedy. These figures, heroes, strategists, kings, friends turned rivals, represent the culmination of every lesson you've encountered on your journey. Dharma, duty, courage, conflict. Their arrival deepens the battlefield's gravity, weaving threads of fate through the smoke and dust. You stand among the ranks, breath caught between awe and dread. The soldiers around you straighten, whisper prayers, touch lucky charms, anchor themselves to their training. Fear still flickers in their eyes, but courage, real courage, now stands beside it. The war drums beat again, slower this time, more deliberate, as though acknowledging the arrival of destiny's chosen. And you feel the battlefield shift, not just into conflict, but into legend. Your path now moves closer to these iconic figures, toward the deeper truths and contradictions that shape them, and toward the spiritual weight that war forces upon every soul who walks its edge. Even from a distance, the presence of the legendary warriors electrifies the air. Their reputations had reached your ears long before this moment. Carried in village stories, Gurukula lessons, whispered comparisons made by hopeful young archers. But witnessing them now, in the dust and light of a real battlefield, you realize how wildly understated those tales had been. Myth tends to polish people into marble, but here, before your eyes, these figures breathe, sweat, laugh, argue, and steady trembling horses. They are human, and somehow more extraordinary because of it. You gravitate toward the cluster where Bhima stands, unmistakable even among armored giants. His shoulders look broad enough to carry a small hut, his arms so thick with muscle they seem carved from tree trunks. Yet he's not the roaring force of nature poets describe. At the moment, he is carefully adjusting the straps of his gauntlets, while scolding a soldier for skipping breakfast. "You can't fight on an empty stomach," Bhima says, thrusting a packet of flattened rice into the man's hands. "Strength needs fuel. Even the wind eats. Why shouldn't you?" The soldier mutters thanks, overwhelmed, while you try very hard not to stare. Then Bhima notices you. "You?" he says, pointing with a hand the size of a cooking pot. "Have you eaten?" Your voice betrays you completely. Yes." He squints. "Are you sure?" You nod again. Faster. "Good," he says, satisfied. Weakness begins in the belly. Then he lifts a chariot wheel, an entire wheel, off the ground with one hand, inspecting its alignment, while the astonished charioteer stammers something about waiting for 3 assistants. Bhima simply shrugs, sets the wheel into place, and tightens the bolts with a grunt. It becomes immediately clear why stories claim he once uprooted a tree just to have something to swing. Nearby, Nakula and Sahadeva adjust their armor with quiet efficiency. The twins move with a mirrored grace, communicating more with glances than words. Nakula tests the sharpness of his sword by shaving a strand of horsehair mid-air. Sahadeva watches the battlefield with a contemplative expression that suggests he has already calculated 12 different outcomes and their implications. You overhear them discussing formations, but also, unexpectedly, debating the best herbs for treating wounds. Their reputations as warriors often overshadows their intellect, but here you see the balance. Precision paired with wisdom, skill paired with foresight. Then there is Yudhishthira. He stands among his troops, not like a king above them, but like a father beside them. He places a steadying hand on a trembling soldier's shoulder, offers a few gentle words, and the man's breath steadies. His calm radiates outward, soothing not through grandeur but through presence. His armor is simpler than his brother's, and his weapon, a spear, rests lightly in his hand. He seems carved from Dharma itself, and yet his eyes hold sorrow, a quiet awareness of the cost that war demands, even when fought for justice. You sense that leadership here is not about loud declarations, but about walking a line edged with moral weight. Then there is Arjuna. He stands beside Krishna, adjusting the string of his great bow, Gandiva. His movements are fluid, economical, almost meditative. You feel instantly why people describe him as the world's finest archer, not because he looks extraordinary, but because he moves with the precision of someone whose entire being is aligned toward one purpose. A group of soldiers watches him with reverent fascination. "Once," one of them whispers, "he hit a target by looking only at its reflection in the water." Another shakes his head. No, he pierced the eye of a wooden bird while ignoring the entire world except the eye." Arjuna pretends not to hear, though a faint smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Then he lifts Gandiva, draws the string back effortlessly, and releases a single arrow that whistles through the air before splitting a distant target cleanly in half. Silence follows. Not awe, silence. The kind that happens when the mind cannot produce words quickly enough to match what the eyes witnessed. But even Arjuna pales, compared to the presence beside him. Krishna, unarmed and serene, radiates a calm that cuts through the chaos, like a quiet river running beneath thunderclouds. He speaks to Arjuna in low, steady tones, and though you cannot hear the words, you see their effect. Arjuna's shoulders loosen, his breathing deepens, his gaze sharpens. This is not a warrior commanding another warrior. This is a guide anchoring a soul. Sri Krishna, a soldier murmurs beside you. He lifts no weapon today, but the battlefield bends around his will. You watch Krishna move among the troops, offering reassurance, wisdom, even humor. Soldiers laugh despite their fear, and something within them straightens. There is something undeniably divine about him, not in the lightning and glory sense, but in the way the world seems to grow quieter when he speaks. And it is in that quiet that you begin to sense something shifting. As legendary figures assemble, the air changes texture, like silk being pulled taut, like a storm gathering pressure far above the clouds. You feel it along your spine, a tingling awareness that something beyond human strength is stirring. A faint wind rises, though no breeze had been present moments before. A few warriors glance upward. One mutters, "The gods are watching." Another whispers, "No, some are here." Because when heroes gather, when fate tightens, when Dharma trembles on the edge of conflict, divine eyes do not merely observe, they intervene. Your path now moves toward that realm, where gods step onto mortal soil, where blessings and curses tilt the balance, and where war becomes not only human struggle, but cosmic play. A hush falls over the battlefield, not the silence of peace, but the breath before lightning quiet that signals a shift in reality itself. The wind, moments ago drifting lazily across the plains, now circles with intention, curling around armor and banners as if guided by invisible hands. Soldiers glance upward, startled by the sudden stillness. Even the elephants pause, their massive forms swaying gently, as though listening. Something is here, not arriving with thunder or celestial fanfare, but with the unmistakable weight of presence, subtle, quiet, profound. You feel it before you understand it, a tingling awareness that crawls across your skin and settles deep behind your ribs. The world seems to grow sharper around the edges, as though the air itself is paying closer attention. It begins with omens. A hawk circles overhead, wings cutting through the sky in a perfect spiral. Warriors murmur. Hawks are messengers between worlds. Then a sudden beam of sunlight pierces the cloud cover, falling directly upon Krishna and Arjuna, illuminating them with a glow that feels far too intentional to be coincidence. Even Bhima, who fears little and questions less, looks up with narrowed eyes, sensing something beyond mortal comprehension. A soft shimmer passes across the battlefield, barely visible yet undeniably present, like heat rising from stone. You blink, and for a breathless instant the colors around you seem brighter, the shadows deeper, the world more real than it has ever been. Then you see her, a woman standing at the edge of the plain, clad in garments that shimmer like moonlit silk, her form shifting between solid and translucent. A few nearby soldiers gasp and fall to their knees. "Devi," one whispers. "A goddess walks among us." She raises a hand, not demanding reverence but offering calm. Her eyes move across the battlefield as though seeing every soul at once, weighing their fates with unspoken compassion. Her lips part, and though she speaks softly, her words ripple through your mind like a breeze through leaves. "Remember," she murmurs, "that every action bears fruit, and every fruit contains the seed of the next action. A blessing, a warning, both, perhaps. Divine words tend to weave meanings the way spiders weave webs, delicate, complex, and impossible to fully unravel until it's too late. Before you can approach her, she fades into the light, disappearing as quietly as she appeared. Elsewhere, a sage-like figure materializes near Yudhishthira, a tall, radiant being with the unmistakable aura of a celestial guide. His voice is a gentle rumble, as though distant thunder has decided to speak softly for once. He places his hand over the king's bowed head. "Stand firm," he says. "Dharma flows through you. Do not let the weight of consequence break your clarity." Yudhishthira inhales deeply, his posture straightening. When he lifts his gaze, his eyes hold, newfound resolve. You move through the shifting crowd, sensing presences everywhere now, subtle flashes at the corners of your sight, whispers carried on the wind, shadows moving against the direction of the sun. One soldier swears he felt a hand on his shoulder, though no one was behind him. Another claims a familiar ancestor's voice, just whispered a blessing in his ear. The divine does not announce itself here. It simply is. And then, there is Krishna. He stands beside Arjuna's chariot, completely calm despite the rising storm of war. The air around him feels different, not shimmering or glowing, but steady, too steady, as though the world anchors itself to him. When he speaks to Arjuna, the wind quiets, the birds pause mid-flight, and even the restless horses seem to listen. Arjuna, though mighty, looks torn. You see the conflict in his eyes, duty pulling one way, compassion pulling another, fear of wrongdoing twisting beneath them both. He lowers his bow, trembling. Krishna touches his arm, and Arjuna's expression shifts from turmoil to focused confusion, like someone on the edge of a revelation. You cannot hear the words Krishna speaks, but you feel them. A vibration in the air, a warmth behind your heart, a shift in something you cannot name, as though the divine is not just talking to Arjuna, but to everyone. A soldier beside you wipes tears from his eyes without understanding why. Another drops to his knees, overwhelmed by an emotion he cannot describe. Even you feel your breath slowing, your thoughts quieting, your awareness widening in ways that defy explanation. It dawns on you that this moment, the stillness, the conversation, the divine currents threading through the air, is no ordinary guidance. It is a doorway, a pivot point where mortal struggle meets cosmic truth. The gods are not merely visiting, they are intervening, teaching, steering destinies like rivers. And you sense that what comes next will reach far beyond the battlefield, beyond kingdoms, beyond the mortal world itself. This divine presence, these subtle teachings, these whispered truths, they are leading towards something vast, toward cosmic understanding, spiritual revelation, and the deeper doctrines that rise only when humanity stands at the edge of impossible choices. Your path now turns toward that cosmic wisdom. The teachings, born at the intersection of duty, fate, and divinity, where the universe itself seems ready to speak. The battlefield remains frozen in that strange, suspended moment, half drenched in dawn's first gold, half trembling under the weight of what has just unfolded. Krishna still stands beside Arjuna, their chariot an island of calm in a sea of tension. The divine presence lingers in the air like a vibration, subtle yet unmistakable, as though the world has cracked open just enough for a sliver of cosmic truth to slip through. You feel drawn toward that truth, not by curiosity alone, but by a quiet recognition inside you. Something ancient, something inborn, something that stirs whenever the mind stands at the threshold of deeper understanding. You take a few steps closer, stopping at a respectful distance. You cannot hear the full conversation, but the fragments that reach you feel like ripples from another plane of existence. Arjuna's voice trembles. How can I fight when those before me are my teachers, my kin? Krishna's reply is steady, gentle, yet powerful. The body acts, but the soul remains untouched. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. A nearby soldier shivers, not from cold, but from the sense that the words are not meant only for Arjuna. not only for warriors, but for anyone who stands torn between responsibility and heartbreak. Another fragment comes, carried by a whisper of wind. Perform your duty without attachment. Act, but do not cling to the fruits of your actions. You feel the truth of it, settle into your bones, and yet it feels impossibly difficult. How does one work without longing for praise? Serve without hoping for gratitude? Fight without yearning for victory? Even the most disciplined warriors seem shaken by the idea. A third echo drifts across the plains. Still your mind, and you will still the world. For a heartbeat, the battlefield does fall silent. Not physically, but inwardly. The soldiers near you seem to breathe more evenly. The tension across the plain loosens just slightly. Even the horses appear calmer. It is as if Krishna's words carry a resonance that slips past logic and nestles directly into the soul. You close your eyes, and something changes. The clamor of the battlefield fades. The dust-filled air softens. You feel, not see, a vastness behind your thoughts, something neither quiet nor loud, but pure. A presence that watches, witnesses, gently observes without judgment. For a moment, the boundary between your breath and the world's breath dissolves. Then, as quickly as it comes, the feeling retreats. You open your eyes, disoriented, steadying yourself. A monk who has wandered close offers a knowing smile. A glimpse, he says softly, the kind that touches only for a moment, but changes you forever. You nod, though you cannot explain why tears threaten your eyes. Another soldier overhears and mutters, "If this is what the great ones hear in full, no wonder they walk differently." He says, it half jokingly, half reverently. As Krishna continues guiding Arjuna, you step back, letting the higher conversation unfold without you. The battlefield feels altered, not because the violence has ceased, but because the perception of it has shifted. Duty, fear, loss, purpose, all swirl together, reframed under the light of something bigger. You walk away from the front lines, the echoes of divine philosophy still vibrating in your mind. Each step back toward the outskirts of the battlefield feels like returning from the edge of reality itself. Not far from the main encampment, you see a group of villagers who have come to offer aid. Women preparing herbal poultices, men distributing water, elders whispering prayers for safety. Their expressions hold weariness, yes, but also resilience, a kind of steady faith that does not need cosmic revelation to stand firm. A woman kneels near a wounded soldier, carefully applying a paste of turmeric and neem. She hums a folk hymn, simple, repetitive, grounding. Its melody could not be more different from the exalted wisdom you just heard, yet it soothes with its own quiet truth. "That song," you say gently, "what does it mean?" She smiles faintly. "It means, do what you can, and trust the rest." It is what my mother sang, and her mother before her. Another villager lights a small clay lamp, placing it on a flat stone. "Every morning," he explains, "we make offerings, food, flame, water, not to ask for miracles, just to keep the connection between us and whatever lies beyond." A child carries a pot of sacred ash, marking foreheads with shy seriousness. "For protection," he says, handing you a pinch. It helps remind people they are not alone. Their gestures are simple, no grand metaphysics, no cosmic revelations, but they hold the same essence as Krishna's teachings: detachment, duty, steadiness, remembrance. Here, spirituality is not spoken in lofty Sanskrit verses. It is woven into tasks, breaths, rituals, even jokes. It is the way villagers accept uncertainty with practiced grace. The way farmers pray for rain, yet prepare for drought. The way mothers teach their children songs to steady frightened hearts. you begin to understand something profound. The divine teachings given on the battlefield are not separate from daily life. They are magnified versions of what people live quietly every day. Duty without attachment, action without ego, inner stillness amid outer turmoil. The villagers continue their work, steady and grounded, embodying the philosophy without needing to name it. As you sit among them, listening to their prayers, their laughter, their determination, you feel your journey shifting once again. The cosmic wisdom you glimpsed is not meant to stay on the battlefield. It lives here, in the ordinary, in the hands of people who rise every day to face uncertainty with faith and resolve. And so your path turns back toward everyday life, toward the rhythms and rituals that shape a society long before war ever arrives. You rise from the ground, ready to step into the daily spiritual practices that sustain entire communities in the age of the Mahabharata. The soft chant of villagers fades behind you as the battlefield and its heavy truths recede into memory. In their place rises something lighter, like the faint fragrance of incense drifting before you can see the flame. The path ahead brightens, both literally and figuratively. The sky clears, the wind warms, and soon, the distant thrum of drums and laughter reaches your ears like an invitation from another world entirely. You follow the sound, leaving the somber encampments behind. The road bends toward a village nestled between rolling fields, and even before you enter, you see splashes of color exploding across the air, powdered pigments tossed skyward, in little bursts that resemble fragments of the rainbow breaking loose from the sky. It seems you've arrived in time for a festival, not a small ritual, not a quiet morning prayer, but a full-hearted celebration with more noise, joy, and chaos than the battlefield ever dreamed of. As you step through the village gate, a shower of pink powder settles over your shoulders. Children shriek with delight and run away before you have time to react. Women carry trays of flower petals, sprinkling them onto anyone who passes. Men prepare music, drums, flutes, cymbals, testing them with loud enthusiasm that leaves your ears buzzing. A villager grins at your bewildered expression. Welcome to the festival. No one escapes without color. And with that warning, someone smears a streak of bright yellow across your cheek. The festival seems to pull the entire village into orbit. Everywhere you look, people are laughing, dancing, eating, blessing, throwing colored powder, and shouting greetings. Even the animals appear caught up in the mood. Cows decorated with garlands, goats sporting bells that jingle with every excited hop, dogs wagging their tails with festive confusion. You drift with the crowd until you reach a large open courtyard, where elders sit in a semicircle watching the chaos with fond amusement. One of them waves you closer. You must be new, the elder says. Sit, eat. Festivals are for everyone. You accept a small clay bowl of sweet rice, warm and fragrant. The elder explains that festivals in this age are more than entertainment. They're vital medicine for the spirit. After months of labor, tension, or hardship, the community gathers to remember joy, to reaffirm togetherness, to reset the heart. Life is heavy enough, the elder says, scooping a handful of petals and tossing them over a group of children dancing in a circle. We must create light where we can. As musicians begin a lively rhythm, dancers form a chain, weaving in intricate patterns. You're pulled into the formation before you can protest, linked hand in hand with villagers who don't let hesitation ruin a good dance. Your steps stumble at first, but the swarm of motion sweeps you along until you're laughing without even realizing when you started. A young girl tugs at your sleeve and pulls you toward a row of clay lamps waiting to be lit. Tonight is for light, she explains earnestly. We chase away darkness, not just the one outside, but the one inside too. She hands you a wick and some oil. You fill a lamp, light it carefully, and watch the flame catch and steady itself. All around you, families light their own lamps until the village glows like a field of stars fallen gently to earth. Later, you wander toward another section of the celebration, where performers reenact ancient stories, tales of gods, sages, demons, and heroes stitched together with humor, theatrics, and occasional improvisation. The actors are villagers in simple costumes, yet the audience watches with rapt attention, cheering at victories and gasping at dramatic revelations. Humor flows freely. Someone jokes that even the gods would attend the festival if only they weren't so busy giving cryptic advice on battlefields. Laughter ripples through the crowd, warm and cleansing. As the sun dips below the horizon, torches and lamps multiply, creating amber pathways between homes. Children run with sparklers fashioned from resin-soaked reeds, drawing bright trails through the air. Women paint intricate patterns on the ground with colored powders, rangoli designs that look delicate enough to blow away, but hold firm under dancing feet. You take a moment to breathe it all in. This swirl of color, music, food, affection, is the counterbalance to everything else you've seen on your journey. If war reveals humanity's fragility, festivals reveal its resilience. If Dharma tests the mind, celebration heals it. If divine wisdom elevates the spirit, communal joy anchors it back to earth. A woman presses a small sweet ball of jaggery and sesame into your hand. Eat, she says with a wink. Happiness needs energy too. As night deepens, families begin returning to their homes, chatting in soft tones, their faces still glowing with festival color and lamplight. Children yawn dramatically, but insist they are not tired. Mothers usher them indoors. Fathers begin tidying up the remnants of celebration. The festive noise quiets, replaced by gentle domestic sounds. Brooms brushing courtyards, pots being washed, elders discussing the day's events. Warm light spills from windows, each home a cocoon of simple contentment. You realize the festival has not ended, only shifted. Its joy now settles into the rhythm of family life, into the intimacy of shared meals, familiar rooms, and small nightly rituals. And as you walk among the homes, the doorway of one hut standing open invites you into the next stage of your journey, the heart of domestic life in the Dvapara Yuga, where survival is shaped not only by war, philosophy, and gods, but by families who weave their days with love, routine, and the quiet strength of everyday existence. The festival's laughter fades into the warm hum of evening as the village settles back into its familiar rhythm. Lamps flicker in open doorways, illuminating earthen walls and woven mats. The scent of roasted grains and simmering lentils drifts through the alleys. Children, still dusted with streaks of festival colors, run one last loop around the courtyard before being herded gently indoors. You follow the soft glow of a household lamp into a modest home where a woman sweeps fine powder patterns, remnants of earlier rangoli, into a neat pile. She smiles and waves you inside, as though hospitality is a natural extension of breathing. And here, perhaps it is. The interior is simple but deeply intentional. The hearth sits at the heart of the home, literally and symbolically. A clay stove occupies a corner, its surface warm even when not in use. Bundles of firewood lean carefully against the wall, arranged by thickness. A small shelf above the stove holds jars of spices, each sealed with cloth and twine. Turmeric, coriander, cumin, mustard seeds. Their fragrances mix in the air, creating a comforting cloud that feels like the memory of countless meals cooked in love and necessity. A woman fans the embers to life, coaxing a small flame that crackles eagerly. She sets a clay pot atop the stove, its rounded belly blackened from years of use. The fire listens, she says with a grin. Feed it gently, and it keeps you fed in return. You notice how the kitchen merges seamlessly into the courtyard. Here, life moves in circles rather than compartments. Under the open sky, women grind grains on stone slabs, their rhythmic movements syncing with the natural pulse of the evening. A grandmother tends to a small herb garden, tulsi, mint, coriander, touching each plant with practiced tenderness. Chickens scratch in the dirt nearby, pecking for stray grains while occasionally issuing bossy squawks. A bamboo platform stands at one edge of the courtyard, covered with woven mats. This is where the family rests during warm nights, sharing stories while fireflies drift lazily across the darkness. In colder weather, everyone moves indoors, but not into separate rooms. Privacy in this age is woven through respect rather than walls. Families sleep side by side on mats of coir or straw, covered in soft cotton cloths. Children sprawled at odd angles, elders curled carefully, babies bundled in soft wraps smelling faintly of ghee. Harmony is not found through space, but through rhythm. Each family member understands the ebb and flow of household life. Younger members fetch water, sweep the courtyard, and help with grinding grains. Elders guide the rhythm with patience, offering advice that usually begins with ancient proverbs and ends with practical instructions. Parents move like choreographers, coordinating meals, repairs, and discipline without ever seeming rushed. You watch a mother divide tasks effortlessly, stirring lentils with one hand while guiding her daughter through reciting a prayer, then shifting to settle a fussy toddler, all while conversing with a neighbor who leans in through the doorway. There is no sense of frantic multitasking, just fluid motion shaped by years of practice. And yet, beneath the smooth surface, you begin to notice deeper currents. As dinner is prepared, the men return from fields or workshops. They take their seats on low stools or woven mats. Women serve the first ladlefuls of rice, then the spiced vegetables, then ladle warm ghee in swirls that gleam golden in the lamplight. Only when everyone has been served do they sit to eat themselves. It is not subservience exactly, more an unspoken agreement whose origins lie deep in custom. A rhythm inherited rather than questioned. You sense tenderness in it, but also see how expectation shapes behavior. Later, as families settle into evening routines, mothers braiding daughters' hair, fathers checking tools for the next day, grandparents telling stories by lamplight, you observe how harmony is nurtured. Voices remain soft. Disputes are addressed quickly. There is an understanding that peace inside the home is as vital as food itself. Still, you feel a subtle tension, like a thread pulled just slightly too tight. Who chooses the household rhythm? Who bends more to maintain harmony? Who is praised for speaking, and who for staying silent? A young girl notices your thoughtful expression and nudges you gently. Homes are like clay, she says wisely. They hold their shape only because someone keeps molding them. And you understand. Domestic life here is a shared creation, yes, but one guided by roles, expectations, and traditions that shape every gesture, every routine, every unspoken rule. The girl's mother calls her inside, and she leaves you with a cheerful wave. You stand in the courtyard as the lamp flames flicker, illuminating the architecture of comfort. Simple walls, shared spaces, layered responsibilities, rhythms carried through generations. But comfort, you know now, is supported by structure. And structure, quiet, steady, invisible, depends heavily on the expectations placed upon men, women, and children in this age. As the household settles into night, and the quiet hum of domestic life surrounds you, your path turns naturally toward those roles. How they form, how they bind, how they shape every corner of life in the Dvapara Yuga. Your journey now leads into the realm of gender roles, complex, deeply rooted, and woven into the fabric of daily existence. Night settles softly over the village, but the home you stand in continues to glow, not just from flickering lamps, but from the quiet, steady presence of the women moving gracefully through its rhythms. You watch as they tend the final chores of the day, extinguishing fires, folding mats, securing grain pots, soothing restless children. And the longer you observe, the more clearly you see that these women carry not only the tasks of the home, but its heartbeat. Their strength is not loud. It doesn't need to be. The next morning, before the sun even hints at rising, the women are already awake. The courtyard hums with whispered prayers, the sound of water being poured, and the scrape of grinding stones. A young mother balances a toddler on her hip while preparing dough with one hand. An elder sorts herbs for medicine. A teenage girl sharpens a sickle, humming a tune that sounds both ancient and mischievous. You suddenly understand. This household, and countless others like it, runs on the fierce practicality of women who have perfected the art of doing a dozen things at once while making it look effortless. A grandmother gestures for you to sit beside her as she grinds spices. Strength isn't shouting, she says, not looking up. Strength is knowing which spice to add when your whole family is arguing and the food still needs to taste good. Her eyes twinkle as she says it, but you sense the deeper truth beneath the humor. Women here navigate not just kitchens, but tensions, social, familial, personal, with the dexterity of seasoned diplomats. They settle disputes before they escalate, negotiate chores, manage supplies, calm tempers, and somehow maintain a sense of harmony in homes overflowing with personalities. Economic roles blend seamlessly with domestic ones. Women spin cotton into thread with practiced ease, their hands moving so quickly the fibers seem to transform by magic. Others shape clay into small lamps or decorative pots to sell in nearby markets. Some stitch garments, embroider festival cloths, or prepare herbal medicines sought by travelers and villagers alike. One woman proudly shows you a basket she has woven, intricate, sturdy, beautiful. "This feeds my family," she says. "Not the basket itself, the work of my hands. A woman's skill is her wealth." Children run past, and she scolds them affectionately without pausing her weaving. Later, you meet a group of women training in a secluded clearing outside the village. Their movements are controlled, fluid, and powerful. They practice staff fighting, hand-to-hand techniques, and the art of maintaining balance even when pushed off-center. One of them notices your curiosity and explains, "We defend our homes, not always with weapons, but it's good to know how." The training is not for war, but for preparedness, a reminder that strength in this age is not confined to masculine forms. Women carry resilience in their muscles, but also in their adaptability, their intuition, their capacity to read danger before others notice it. Their spiritual strength matches their physical and economic presence. At dusk, women gather near the village shrine, forming a circle around a clay lamp. They sing hymns, soft, melodic, layered with harmonies that drift like incense smoke through the trees. One young woman leads the chant, her voice steady enough to calm even the restless animals nearby. When she finishes, she explains to you, "We sing to steady our hearts. A steady heart keeps a steady home." You watch as they offer flowers, water, and a few grains of rice, not out of superstition, but as an act of acknowledgement, a daily gratitude. They carry the spiritual health of the family just as much as the material, and through all of these roles, economic, domestic, martial, spiritual, women weave a pattern that holds the village together. You begin to see that their strength is not merely their capability, but their adaptability. They are strategists when shortages strike, healers when illness spreads, negotiators during conflict, teachers to the next generation. A mother pauses on her way back to the house and notices you observing the scene with a mixture of awe and confusion. She smiles knowingly and gestures toward a group of children clustered under the banyan tree. "You want to understand us?" she says. "Watch them." The children sit in a loose circle, mimicking the movements, stories, and rituals they've seen their elders perform. A little girl pretends to prepare a meal with imaginary ingredients. A boy imitates his father's posture while checking the strength of a stick spear. Another child arranges pebbles in a pattern that looks suspiciously like a rangoli design. "They learn from us," the mother continues, "not because we lecture, but because they live beside us. Childhood here is training, not for war, not for duty, but for life." Her words settle warmly in your chest. You follow her gaze toward the children, their laughter rising like morning bird song. And as you watch them tumble into a game that blends imagination with imitation, playing house, playing warriors, playing priests and potters and cooks, you feel the natural shift in your journey. The world of adults is shaped by experience, but the world of children is shaped by observation, absorption, and endless curiosity. You step toward the group, ready to witness the beginning of everything. How children in the Dvapara Yuga live, learn, play, and grow into the adults who will one day carry all of this ancient world forward. Your next chapter leads into childhood, its joys, its responsibilities, and the small everyday adventures that shape a lifetime. Morning light spills over the village like warm milk, softening every shadow. Children, who seem to operate on a secret schedule that begins before adults fully awaken, are already scattered across the courtyards, lanes, and open fields. Their laughter drifts through the air, mixing with birdsong and the rhythmic grinding of grain stones. After the intense worlds of warriors, sages, and festivals, this youthful chaos feels like stepping into the heartbeat of the age. A group of children beckon you with the urgency reserved for both playmates and accomplices. They drag you toward an open clearing where a game is already in progress. It involves a stick, a circle scratched into the earth, and an astonishing amount of shouting. One child explains the rules in a single breathless sentence, something about hitting a small ring of woven grass and keeping it inside the circle. But by the time you understand half of it, the game has already restarted. The children play with a seriousness that would impress a war general. A girl about 7 years old launches the ring with such precision that the boys instantly demand to know who taught her. She proudly declares, "My mother, she never misses." And you remember the women's martial training, the subtle strength woven through daily life. Here it manifests without hesitation. Children inheriting confidence simply because they watch it modeled every day. Elsewhere, a group reenacts scenes from the epics. One boy plays a lion with great dramatic flair. Another stands on a rock pretending to receive divine weapons from the heavens. A third insists he must be the sage because, as he announces solemnly, "I have the best beard." He then produces a bit of straw from behind his ear to serve as said beard. Their knowledge is uncanny. Without formal instruction, they absorb stories that hold the moral and cultural architecture of the age. When a child pretending to be a king hesitates between justice and impatience, another shouts, "Dharma first," as though this is simply how decisions are made, even in play. You soon realize that Dharma is not taught like arithmetic. It is lived, modeled, absorbed, woven into chores, stories, festivals, and parental instructions like a quiet but constant hum. During mid-morning, children shift from games to responsibilities. A group heads to the well, with small pots balanced expertly on their hips. Another sweeps the courtyard, pushing dust into neat piles with miniature brooms. Some help grind grain by taking turns pushing the heavy stone grinder, an act requiring coordination and the occasional pep talk. One young boy sits beside his grandmother, learning how to shape dough into neat circles. She guides his fingers with infinite patience. A good hand makes good food, she tells him. A good mind makes good choices. Both must be trained. He nods solemnly, puffing with pride when his dough circle turns out only slightly lopsided. Education happens everywhere. Older children study basic letters inscribed in the dirt with sticks. They practice the first verses of sacred hymns, repeating them until the rhythm imprints itself like breath. A wandering teacher occasionally visits, offering lessons in mathematics, archery stances, or moral tales. His presence sparks excitement, not because he gives tests, but because he brings stories from distant villages, adding fresh colors to their world. Imagination flows easily through their daily lives. A length of rope becomes a serpent or a sacred river. A clay pot becomes a treasure chest. A tree stump becomes a throne. Their world expands and contracts fluidly, merging reality with myth, as though no boundary separates the two. But childhood in this age is not free of hardship. As the afternoon settles, a child coughs. Just once, but deep enough to catch the attention of a nearby mother. Illness, in a world without modern medicine, is not a trivial visitor. Another child sits quietly, rubbing his forehead, cheeks flushed. His mother presses a hand to his skin and immediately calls to an elder. The atmosphere shifts subtly as the community responds. A healer arrives. A middle-aged woman carrying a pouch of herbs, small clay jars, and a bundle of neem twigs. Her presence brings calm. She kneels beside the sick child, feeling his pulse, examining his tongue, asking him to breathe deeply. Her movements are practiced, confident. "This is heat imbalance," she announces gently. "Too much sun today. He needs cooling herbs and rest." She prepares a mixture of mint, coriander, and a pinch of powdered sandalwood, dissolving it into cool water. The smell is refreshing, earthy. After the child drinks it, she instructs his siblings to shade him with a cloth, while she massages his temples with oil infused with calming herbs. For another child with a scraped knee, likely earned during one of the more enthusiastic games, she cleans the wound with turmeric paste and wraps it with a strip of cotton. "Pain teaches caution," she tells him, "but healing teaches patience." You watch, in quiet amazement, at how smoothly the healer moves between roles: physician, counselor, comforter. She explains nothing with arrogance, yet her knowledge seems vast, inherited through generations of hands-on wisdom. Later, she sits beside you and says, "Children are easy to heal. Their bodies want balance. But more than that, this village is their medicine. Laughter, chores, stories, prayers. These keep them strong." You think back to the games, the lessons, the shared meals, the watchful elders. It makes sense. Childhood here isn't isolated from the adult world. It is interwoven with it, forming the foundations of health, identity, and duty. As the sun dips behind the trees and children gather for one last round of games, their energy floods the village like light. Even the adults seem to absorb it, smiling more freely as they watch their future dart between puddles and prayer mats. You feel something warm settle inside you, a recognition that understanding a civilization begins with understanding its children. And as the healer collects her herbs and prepares to visit another home, she gestures for you to follow. "If you want to know how we survive this world," she says, "come see how we heal." Your feet move automatically, and with that step, your journey enters its next realm, the world of illness, healing, and the ancient medical traditions that sustain life in the Dvapara Yuga. You follow the healer down a winding path toward a quieter part of the village, where the air grows thick, with the scent of herbs drying on ropes and clay pots arranged in disciplined rows. This is her domain, a place where leaves, roots, minerals, and intuition converge into the first line of defense against the unpredictable realities of ancient life. The sounds of children laughing fade behind you, replaced by the softer chorus of mortar and pestle, bubbling decoctions, and the occasional sneeze from a visitor unprepared for the potency of certain mixtures. The healer kneels beside a stone slab and begins sorting herbs with practiced elegance. Illness, she says without looking up, is nature reminding the body to rebalance. Medicine simply helps it listen. She pushes one bundle toward you. Smell this. You take a cautious sniff and immediately recoil, eyes watering. She chuckles. Good, if it makes you cry, it works. The herb, she explains, is a potent remedy for congestion. Mixed with honey and warm ghee, it can clear a blocked nose in minutes, or make you regret you ever had one. As she works, villagers come and go seeking treatment. A farmer presents a swollen ankle from slipping near the fields. She applies a paste of turmeric, garlic, and warm mustard oil, wrapping it tightly with cloth. A weaver complains of persistent headaches. The healer prepares a tea of brahmi leaves and fennel seeds to cool the mind. A child arrives with stomach troubles from eating unripe fruit, and she mixes cumin, ginger, and a pinch of black salt into a sour-sweet tonic. The child gulps down bravely. You begin to see Ayurvedic principles at play. The belief that balance of wind, fire, and earth energies determines health. That food is medicine. That prevention is just as important as cure. Every treatment is tailored, every remedy crafted with attention to season, age, behavior, even mood. But the healer's methods are not always gentle. At one point she retrieves a bowl of fermented liquid that smells like a forgotten swamp. Good for fever, she says. Bad for everything else. You watch in awe as a brave or foolish patient drinks it with only minor wincing. Later, she produces a heated metal rod, explaining that certain infections respond best to controlled burning. You inch backward instinctively. She laughs. Don't worry. This is only for the stubborn illnesses and the stubborn patients. Some treatments border on magical thinking, yet you sense their roots in centuries of trial, error, and careful observation. She crushes neem leaves to cleanse wounds, uses ashwagandha to strengthen the body, prepares cooling powders from sandalwood for heat rashes. Each remedy has a story. Each ingredient has a personality. Each cure has a rhythm. During a quiet moment, she shows you her collection of stones and minerals, powdered pearls for vitality, mica flakes for certain chronic ailments, ash from sacred herbs used sparingly for spiritual purification. Illness, she says, can begin in the body, but it can also begin in the mind or the spirit. The best healer sees all three. A man arrives complaining of fear and nightmares. She does not reach for herbs first. Instead, she asks about his worries, his losses, his habits. Then she gives him jasmine oil to place on his temples and tells him to sleep near a lamp for the next 3 nights. Sometimes light heals what medicine cannot, she murmurs. You realize that healing here is as much conversation as concoction, part diagnosis, part spiritual anchoring, part storytelling, and always, always an acknowledgement that the human body lives at the mercy of powerful forces, weather, hunger, hard labor, and the vast unpredictability of nature. The healer pauses to sip water and looks toward the forest beyond the village. Medicine keeps us alive, she says, but nature keeps us humble. Fever can be cured, snakebite, perhaps. But what of storms, floods, wild beasts? The earth heals, and the earth harms. You follow her gaze, and suddenly feel the weight of her words. For all the remedies and rituals that offer protection, this world is still shaped by forces no human can fully control. A sudden monsoon can sweep away crops. A wild boar can destroy a season's worth of labor in a single night. A cobra slipping into a storage hut can change a family's fate. Even the gentle river has moods, some nourishing, some devastating. A rustle in the underbrush draws your attention. The healer listens intently. "See," she says softly, "nature is always near, always reminding us." She gathers a handful of herbs and tucks them into a pouch. "Walk with me. I'll show you why we never take a quiet forest for granted." Her voice carries neither fear nor dramatics, just calm acceptance. And as you step beside her into the shadowed edge of the wild, you feel the shift once again, leaving the realm of controlled healing and entering the unpredictable landscapes that require not herbs or chance, but heightened awareness and respect. Your journey now moves toward the threats of nature, its beauty, its danger, and the delicate dance humans must learn to survive it. The healer leads you past the last row of mud brick homes and into the whispering green that surrounds the village. The path narrows quickly, swallowed by tall grasses and the sprawling shade of banyan trees. The deeper you walk, the more the world shifts. The tidy rhythms of human life fading behind you, replaced by the layered sounds of nature. Insects buzzing with territorial authority, birds issuing sharp warnings from hidden perches, and the faint, unsettling rustle of something moving where you cannot see it. "Here," the healer says, pausing to touch the bark of a neem tree, "your senses must be as alert as your breath." No sooner has she spoken than a soft hiss slices through the air. Your heart jumps as a slender patterned snake slides across the path, its scales catching flashes of sunlight like polished copper. The healer remains perfectly still. "Most bites come from fear," she murmurs. "Not the snake's, yours." Only when the serpent disappears into the brush does she gesture for you to continue walking. The forest seems to hum around you, alive and aware. High above, monkeys dangle from branches with casual arrogance, their dark eyes gleaming with mischief. One drops a mango pit at your feet with surgical precision, chattering triumphantly. The healer swats the air with her shawl. "Do not show them your food," she warns, "or they will negotiate with you like bandits." A moment later, a small troop of them descends, forming what can only be described as an organized fruit-thieving committee. They rummage through fallen leaves with such efficiency, you half expect them to form a union. One monkey stares boldly at you, as if daring you to challenge his authority. You step back. He approves of this decision. Nature, you realize, does not wait for your permission. It thrives, hunts, soothes, destroys, all on its own schedule. Further along the trail, you hear the distant rumble of thunder, though the sky remains deceptively bright. The healer lifts her face to the wind. Monsoon is near. You can smell it before you see it. Within minutes, the air thickens, heavy with moisture. Leaves tremble not from wind but from anticipation. The first drop lands on your wrist, a warm, heavy bead that feels almost deliberate. Then another, and then the sky opens. The monsoon arrives like an uninvited but beloved relative, loud, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. Sheets of rain crash through the canopy, soaking you instantly. The healer laughs, wrapping her shawl tightly. This is how the earth resets its pulse. The ground transforms into rushing rivulets that threaten to sweep your feet from beneath you. Trees sway dramatically. A startled deer darts across your path, half panicked, half exhilarated by the sudden storm. Rainwater pools in low spots, forming temporary ponds that reflect the stormy sky like trembling mirrors. Yet as quickly as it began, the monsoon thins, dwindling into scattered drips. Steam rises from the earth, carrying the scent of wet soil, petrichor, so rich you feel it settle in your chest like a blessing. But the calm is temporary. A deep, resonant growl echoes through the forest. The healer stiffens. You freeze. Even the monkeys vanish into the treetops. A tiger, unseen yet undeniably present, moves somewhere nearby. The sound is low, authoritative, and absolutely certain of its place in the world. You whisper, "Should we run?" She answers without turning. We should not challenge something built entirely of power. You wait, breath held painfully tight, until the growl fades into the distance. Only then does she motion for you to continue. Your legs feel strangely hollow, as if courage has temporarily evacuated your body. By the time you reach the outskirts of the forest, the sky is already beginning to shift again, darkening not with rain, but with the soft indigo of approaching evening. The healer stops and points to cracked earth between tree roots. "This is drought," she says. Not as dramatic as monsoon, not as loud as tigers, but just as dangerous. She kneels and brushes dry soil through her fingers. When the rains do not come, hunger arrives instead. You think back to the fields you once walked, lush with grain and murmuring with life. Without water, those fields would become barren scars. Nature gives and takes with equal force. As you return toward the village, fireflies begin to blink around you, cautious sparks lighting the dusk. Children chase them with laughter, unaware of the tiger's growl or the snake's hiss you encountered earlier. The healer watches them fondly. "You see," she says, "we live between danger and wonder. Every day is both a test and a lesson." Torches are lit along the village paths as the final light drains from the sky. Shadows lengthen, stretching like silent guardians between huts and trees. The world grows quieter, softer, but no less alive. For nighttime in the ancient world is its own landscape, one where stars blaze with startling clarity, where fear and beauty intertwine, where the village becomes an island of firelight in a vast sea of darkness. And as you step into that deepening night, your journey moves naturally into its next realm, the mysteries and rhythms of life after sundown, when the world slows but never truly sleeps. Night settles over the village like a great woven shawl, heavy in some places, sheer in others, warm, where the lamps glow and cool where shadows stretch their long mysterious fingers. The transformation happens quickly. One moment the world is washed in the amber of twilight. The next, darkness pours over rooftops and courtyards, softening every outline and sharpening every sound. Oil lamps flicker to life one by one, small flames carefully coaxed from cotton wicks dipped in ghee. Their glow is tender rather than bright, illuminating only what stands close: faces, doorways, bowls of cooling rice, but surrendering the rest of the world to night's whispering embrace. A lamp placed at a shrine casts dancing shapes across a wall, turning simple shadows into fleeting stories of gods, beasts, and wandering spirits. Children watch the shapes with wide eyes while elders smile, knowing those shapes are nothing more than light, playing with imagination, but also knowing that imagination is a force as real as any tool in this world. The village quiets, but not completely. The day's work has ended, yet the night has its own tasks. In some homes, families sit together around low lamps, talking in hushed tones. A father recounts a story he once heard from a traveling sage. A mother braids her daughter's hair while humming a melody from childhood. The crackling of distant firewood punctuates the night like punctuation marks in an unwritten poem. Outside, the air cools quickly, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and blooming night flowers. The healer's herbs rustle softly, as though the plants themselves breathe more freely once the sun has withdrawn. Crickets begin their rhythmic chorus, creating a soundtrack that blends effortlessly with the low murmur of river water in the distance. Your senses feel sharper now. The darkness isn't empty, it pulses with hidden life. You hear the flap of wings overhead as a large owl cuts across the sky with silent precision. A fox moves somewhere along the edge of the fields, its footsteps faint. The leaves in the banyan tree whisper secrets as the breeze passes through them. Even the shadows seem to lean closer, curious about you, curious about why you're still awake. For a moment, the boundary between outer darkness and inner stillness blurs. The lamp beside you flickers, and with each wavering of the flame, your thoughts begin to wander, gently, without aim. You recall the healer's wisdom, the children's laughter, the women's strength, the warrior's resolve, the farmer's sweat, the divine voices on the battlefield. You feel all these moments echo inside you, layering like soft strands of thread being woven into one shared cloth. Night has a way of pulling memories forward, letting them drift across your mind like constellations rearranging themselves. A cluster of stars appears overhead, brilliant, sharp, startling. Without city lights to dim them, the heavens glow with a clarity that feels ancient and intimate. You tilt your head back, letting the sky fill your vision. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a pale river of light, and for a fragile instant, the world feels suspended between breath and infinity. Beside you, someone quietly lights incense. The smoky fragrance rises in thin spirals, merging with the cool night air. The world becomes honest at night, an elder whispers. Daylight hides things, night reveals them. Perhaps that's why your mind wanders so easily now, why questions surface that had no room during the busyness of day. Questions about fate, about dharma, about the paths people walk without ever fully choosing them. Questions about the fragility of life in a world filled with both breathtaking beauty and sudden danger. Questions about what it means to survive, to belong, to understand. A dog barks far away. Somewhere closer, a newborn goat bleats, answered quickly by its anxious mother. A pair of teenagers sit on a rooftop, whispering secrets they would never dare share in daylight. Lamps burn low, shadows grow thicker, and the night deepens into a stillness that feels almost sacred. You sit in that stillness, breathing it in. Darkness, you realize, is not merely the absence of light. It is a place where thoughts have room to move, where memories soften, where the world steps back just enough for reflection to step forward. It is a realm for stories told in murmurs, for soft realizations, for quiet courage. And as you listen to the night, really listen, you understand that your journey through this ancient world is nearing its final arc. You have walked through villages and forests, cities and battlefields, homes and temples. You have witnessed life in all its layers, mundane, divine, joyful, brutal, sacred, fragile. Now the darkness invites you inward. The oil lamp beside you flickers one last time before settling into a steady, gentle flame. Its glow pools around your feet like liquid gold. The shadows just beyond it whisper, shifting softly, as if waiting for your next step. The night prepares the heart for closure, for the kind of reflection that arrives only when the world grows quiet enough to hear itself. And so your journey moves toward its final reflections, the wisdom gathered, the transformations felt, and what it means to carry these ancient lessons back into the life you once knew. Night deepens into a velvety stillness, and the village seems to float within it like a tiny constellation of warm lamps. As you sit, absorbing the quiet, a soft sound reaches you, footsteps shuffling along the path. You turn to see an elderly man carrying a small bundle of grain toward a neighbor's door. He moves slowly but with purpose. When he reaches the threshold, he sets the bundle down, knocks once, and walks away before anyone can open it. It takes you a moment to realize what you've witnessed. Kindness here is not an announcement. It is a quiet habit, woven into the muscle memory of daily life. The door opens behind him, and a woman gasps softly in gratitude. Her family's storage jars have run low, and she had whispered her worry to no one but the gods. Yet somehow, someone heard. As night enfolds the village, you begin to notice countless such gestures, flickering into view like hidden stars. A young boy delivers a bowl of warm milk to an elderly widow who struggles to light her own stove at night. A neighbor brings an extra blanket to a family whose roof leaks. A group of teens gather around a nervous young mother, singing lullabies until her baby finally sleeps. None of these moments are grand, but each one is sturdy, strong enough to carry the weight of survival in a world where nature, disease, and conflict loom large. You wander through the village's heart, where a group has gathered under a large banyan tree. Someone strums a lute-like instrument, another keeps time by tapping a clay pot. Slowly, more villagers drift toward the music, forming a gentle ring around the performers. The healer sits nearby, her face illuminated by lamplight. She pats the ground beside her, inviting you to sit. "Songs," she murmurs, "are medicine too." The performance begins softly. An old ballad about a farmer who loved the monsoon so much he danced with every storm. The children giggle at his foolish bravery, but the adults smile knowingly. Everyone here has danced with storms, literally or otherwise. Another song follows, this one about siblings separated by fate but bound by affection strong enough to cross mountains. Then another, celebrating the arrival of spring and the return of hope. People hum along, sway gently, or close their eyes as memories surface like shy fish in a clear pond. You feel yourself relaxing in a way that has nothing to do with comfort or fatigue. It is the relaxation that comes from being held, not physically, but communally. Community, you realize, is the ancient world's greatest survival tool. People here survive not because they are individually strong, but because their strength interlocks like woven rope. A family can lose its harvest, but the village will not let them starve. A child can fall ill, but healers, neighbors, and elders rally to restore balance. A widow can mourn alone, but she will not remain alone for long. Someone always knocks, always listens, always shows up with warm rice or a kind word. A group of young girls bursts into laughter nearby. They're sharing a piece of cloth decorated with tiny embroidered shapes, gifts made by each of their mothers. "We made it together," one explains proudly, "so no one forgets that we're never alone." Their joy is so bright it seems to soften even the night around them. Further along the path, two men repair a neighbor's fence, though the neighbor isn't home. "He helped build my roof," one says, simply when you ask why. "We help each other. That's the rule." The rule. Not written, not enforced, simply lived. The healer leans close, her voice low. "Kindness is our armor," she says. "Strength of the heart is the strength that doesn't crack." She gestures to the entire village, clusters of families sharing stories, repairing tools, passing food, comforting children. The world can be hard, but the heart is how we soften it. You breathe in the warm scent of oil lamps, rice, flowers, and earth. The night seems to pulse gently, almost like the village itself has a heartbeat. And in that moment, you sense the deeper truth behind everything you've witnessed on your journey. Dharma, courage, wisdom, ritual, these are guiding pillars. But kindness, small, steady, unwavering, is the living thread that binds it all. It is the foundation beneath the homes, the balm after war, the light that lingers when lamps burn low. It is what allows people not only to survive, but to remain human in a world that constantly tests their humanity. Your heart feels fuller now, warmer, anchored by a truth that needs no scriptures to validate it. A child hands you a small clay lamp as if sensing your thoughts. "For your journey," she says simply. You hold it carefully, feeling its warmth seep into your palms. Night deepens, but the shadows no longer feel mysterious or intimidating. They feel like space, room for reflection, room for closing one chapter and preparing for the last. You look around the village, at faces softened by firelight and connection, and you understand that your journey through the ancient world is reaching its final note. The lamp flickers gently. It is time to gather the wisdom of everything you've seen and prepare for the closing message, the final insight the Mahabharata age has to offer before you return to your own world. The night has settled into its deepest blue, the kind that feels less like darkness and more like a quiet invitation. Lamps flicker softly in doorways. The last murmurs of conversation drift into stillness. Even the wind has lowered its voice. You find yourself at the edge of the village, holding the small clay lamp gifted to you by a child, the flame glowing with the soft steadiness of a heartbeat. This is where your journey through the age of the Mahabharata draws inward, toward reflection, toward understanding, toward the gentle question that now rises like dawn light. Would you have survived here? At first, the answer may seem practical. You imagine the hardships, waking before sunrise to gather water, grinding grain by hand, navigating unpredictable monsoons, tending fires that must never fully die, sleeping lightly because wild animals do not always respect boundaries. You think of illness without modern medicines, of the ever-present risks of war, of tigers in the forest and snakes in the grass. Survival on those terms feels daunting, but the longer you stand beneath the ancient sky, the more you understand that survival in this age was never merely about enduring the physical world. It was equally, perhaps more, about the inner one. Would you have adapted to the rhythm of communal life, where privacy bends to necessity and harmony depends on your willingness to listen, compromise, and contribute? Would you have learned the subtle language of kindness here, the currency of shared grain, mended fences, songs offered freely, small gestures carrying the weight of unspoken love? Would you have found meaning not in isolated ambitions, but in woven connections, in knowing your life was braided into the lives of others? The people of this era did not survive alone. They survived together, through cooperation, through ritual, through the mutual recognition that each person was both strong individually and stronger collectively. You think back on the faces you've met along the way, the farmer who taught you the rhythm of the plow, the artisan whose hands shaped destiny from clay and metal, the warrior trembling before battle yet stepping forward anyway, the mother who cooked, soothed, disciplined, and believed in the quiet strength of routine, the healer who balanced intuition with ancient knowledge, the children who absorbed dharma through games and laughter, the elders who carried stories like lanterns through the dark. Each one embodied survival in a different form, and each one showed you that endurance is not defined by might, but by presence. How fully you show up to each moment. You lift the clay lamp slightly, feeling its warmth against your fingers. Would you have survived the age of the Mahabharata? You begin to realize the question is not asking whether you would have outrun tigers, mastered a bow, or memorized mantras before sunrise. It asks something gentler, deeper. Would you have been patient enough to listen, humble enough to learn, brave enough to care for others, not just yourself? Still enough inside to hear the quiet guidance of Dharma? These are strengths not measured in muscle or weaponry, but in heart and awareness. And they are strengths you recognize not only in the people of this ancient world, but in yourself. For as foreign as this age may feel, its tools simple, its dangers primal, its rhythms slower, its truths are timeless. The world still tests you, though in different ways. You still navigate storms, though they arrive as anxieties instead of monsoons. You still face battles, though their battlegrounds are shaped by choices rather than weapons. You still meet tigers, though they wear forms your ancestors could never have imagined. Survival, true survival, has always been about more than endurance. It has been about grounding yourself in meaning, about seeking connection when the world feels vast, about protecting your inner flame in the winds of chaos. You look up. The sky above you is enormous. shimmering with stars that once guided travelers, sages, and warriors through centuries of change. Their light falls upon you now, just as it once fell upon the heroes of the Mahabharata. Time has stretched, shifted, rewritten itself beyond recognition, but the starlight remains the same. You feel smaller beneath it, yet somehow steadier. Grounded. Held. The clay lamp in your hand flickers again, its flame rising just slightly before settling. A breath of night air brushes your cheek, cool, gentle, ancient. And for one quiet moment, you sense the entire world inhale and exhale around you. Maybe you would have survived this era. Maybe you already have, in countless ways. For survival is not only the persistence of the body, it is the persistence of hope, of awareness, of compassion. It is the courage to live fully, even when the world feels uncertain. It is the wisdom to find stillness in the heart, no matter how loud the outer battles become. You turn back toward the village, where lamps burn low and shadows lie peacefully across the sleeping earth. Your journey through this ancient world has taken you across fields and forests, into homes and palaces, onto battlefields and beneath cosmic wisdom. It has shown you how people endured hardship, found joy, held fast to Dharma, and wove meaning from the threads of daily life. And now, as the night holds its breath around you, you step gently into the final truth. You do not survive an age by conquering it. You survive by finding yourself within it. Holding the lamp close, you walk back toward the soft glow of the village, knowing that the story of survival and the calm it offers will travel with you long after this chapter closes.